You're listening to The Sports Fix.
Portions of the Sports Fix brought to you by Quick Lane at Valley Ford Truck, home of the low price tire guarantee. QuickLane.com/Valley Ford Truck.
Sports Fix listeners, don't wait all day or all week to get in on the fun. The party doesn't stop when we go off the air all week long. The Sports Fix social media sites are your one-stop shop for all things Cleveland sports. Jump over to Facebook.com/TheSportsFix, Facebook.com/TheSportsFix, and become a fan today because we love fans and they create some of the best sports talk in town, Daddy. You'll enjoy talking to your fellow Cleveland sports fans on the Sports Fix fan page. And if Twitter's your thing, well, you know how we do it. Tweet with us at The Sports Fix CLE. It's that simple.
Twitter.com/TheSportsFixCLE, baby.
Chat live with the crew during all your favorite Cleveland sports events, tickets and contests and trivia and so much more. Get with us today, The Sports Fix on social media, Facebook.com/TheSportsFix. Tweet with us at The Sports Fix CLE. Join The Sports Fix on Facebook and Twitter today.
I'm Tyler Zeller from the Cleveland Cavaliers, and you're listening to The Sports Fix.
Live in Ohio, it's time to get your fix. The Sports Fix.
Good afternoon, everybody. It is Tuesday, June 17th. We are live and on the air, rocking and rolling, baby. The Sports Fix. J-Rocc here, Jerry Myers with you, locking it, loading it, firing it up, baby. We've got another incredible show. Well, I don't know if it's incredible. You be the judge if it's incredible. But I have a lot of faith in today's broadcast and in the show in general. So allow me to speculate that it's going to be yet another incredible edition of the Sports Fix. Hey guys, I'm feeling good. Hopefully you guys are too. That's what happens when the Indians go out there. They take care of some business to open up the homestand, and I'll tell you, I can't wait to get into this and talk. We're going to talk a lot of Tribe heavy early on the show. We've got Jeff Gorman from Indians101.com. He's going to join in the conversation just about 15 minutes from now as well. So talk a lot about that. Trevor Bauer, I'll tell you, it was funny because, I don't know, 4th, 5th inning, somewhere around there. Jerry, my son, and I are watching the game, and he goes, "What do you think, Dad? Get us to the 7th inning there?" And I said, "No way, man." I said, "Look at that pitch count, man." I said, "We'll be good. If he can just finish off here, get us through the 5th, and we're gonna have to go to the bullpen." But you know what? 40 some pitches later, he was still there doing what he had to do. I was very impressed by that. And then, hey, Carrasco came in. The two of them really saved the bullpen, in my opinion, some work last night. I mean, we know how overtaxed that bullpen's been, and to have those two guys go out there and do that. Like I said, Bauer, really, I mean, I was just projected out. I'm going, man, I don't see him getting anywhere. I just don't think he's going to make it much longer in this game. Not that there was anything wrong with what he was doing, but just didn't seem like it was going to work out that way. But, man, he gutted it through, and he got up there. Highest pitch count of the season that an Indians pitcher has been allowed to go to last night, and much, much needed, too. And I'll talk, too, with Jeff. I know I got some people hit me up yesterday. I think it wasn't that long after we got off the air when the Indians made the move, made the switch, and sent House back down. And obviously, it was in anticipation of what's coming with, having to make the move with McAllister. But, some people are like, oh, man, why? And my man Joe Monaco, and I like Joe, man, but he was like, a dumb move by the Indians here to do. But, I mean, clearly, what are you going to do? You can keep House has pitched his last start for you for now. Now, unless that was what, he was referring to on our Facebook page. But, you needed some reinforcements in the bullpen. And so you bring up Lowe, do a couple of days with an extra man in the bullpen, and then you'll make the move and send somebody else down when it's time to bring Zach up to make a start. But I thought it was, again, now you could make the argument about keeping House around one more start. That's different. But once you made the decision that he wasn't going to start again, I mean, he's just basically that's a dead roster spot right there. And when you need help in the bullpen, and when you need to keep that bullpen fresh and going, I mean, that's kind of the no-brainer move right there as far as that the actualities of that part of it. But we're going to talk about all of that. As I said, Jeff Gorman from Indians101.com is here as well. We're talking with Dr. Football today. It's Tuesday, and today, too, going to get a little more into, of course, we had a lot, just the whole weekend to catch up on yesterday, and that show just took on a life of its own yesterday by the time it was over. So many things. Going to talk much more in-depth today with Jeff about, not only Pete Rose coming back. I thought it was interesting to see him do the independent league gimmick, but Tony Gwynn, a little bit more on the impact of him and the art of hitting, and perhaps the lost art at the same time of some of the things that a guy like that brings to the table. Chuck Nolls, Dr. Football, and I will talk a little bit more about him. Of course, both of them passing away in the last few days, and so going to talk a little bit more about both of them here today. 20 years. Do you know what was going on 20 years ago today? Pretty much right around this time or so. 20 years ago today, O.J. Simpson was out with his boy AC in the white Bronco, slow rolling his way around, and that whole, matter of fact, the documentary, June 17th, 1994, about all of the different sporting events happening on it. It was one of those good 30 for 30s, but 20 years ago today, O.J. was contemplating leaving the world behind because he couldn't deal with the shame of what he had done, or maybe hadn't done, or was being accused of doing, or I don't know, cryptic notes and slow motion chases and everything. But man, just 20 years ago today, that happened. Think about how much has passed. I mean, because you know what? We're so used to it and numbed up now, and I'm going to talk to Dr. Football about this, but we talk about how every day, they got a police blotter now on the Pro Football Talk site and all of that, and it's become kind of numbing, but, not that there weren't big, high-profile cases that involved athletes back then and in the past, but, that was kind of the opening the door of that big, giant, massive star involved in this huge case. And again, I'm sure I'm forgetting examples of others, so don't cut me off at the pass here. But you know what I'm saying. That was kind of and I think that's why it was so, he was the juice. He was loved. He was hurtling through Hertz airports, and he was a, actor and everything, and living the dream, and everybody's, the juice, man. And then, bam, here comes everything that happened. And then, but like I say, it looks different in hindsight 20 years later, because you just look back and you crack jokes about OJ, and OJ's still looking for the killer and all that. But think of what it was like then. It was like, wow. And then that case was just crazy, including the chase. He basically writes, a suicide note, and then gets in the car and slow rolls his way around town, and then all of that. Anyways, 20 years ago today, where does the time go? We're talking about all of that, some throwbacks to yesterday. I got a lot of feedback about talking about David Blatt and the Cavaliers coaching job, and I think a lot of you guys are feeling what we were talking about yesterday, that whether he's the guy or not the guy, that the feeling is that the Cavs may have that feeling that that's the guy, and you just, you know what, and we'll talk about it more, but teams notorious, not just Cleveland, everywhere, of copying the hot hand, copying the winning formula, whatever it may be. If a team wins big with big cornerbacks and safeties like in the NFL, what becomes the new trend? Getting the big cornerbacks and safeties. And then if another team comes in and they shrink down the offensive line and they win, all of a sudden teams start copying that. You know what? It happens in all sports, and you see that a lot. So, obviously, the various backgrounds of those guys on the Spurs, the international backgrounds. Now you wonder if that's going to be the formula that teams like the Cavs and other teams that are trying to form their own franchise definition, if they don't start going that route. But you wonder if you'll see some teams that just put together combinations of European players that don't play well together and foreign players, because they think that you copy the formula, but what people forget is it's not a cut and paste formula. And I don't just mean the Spurs, I mean in general. When you copy the big corners and safeties, it doesn't do you any good if you get 6'6" cornerbacks who can't cover a lick. It doesn't do you any good. They're just tall bums. That's all. They're just bigger bums than the average ones. You have to have the right guys to go in that too. So it's not just a matter of copying the system, but it's a matter of putting the right pieces in that system too. So anyways, we're going to talk about all of that today. A lot going on, and we want to talk to you. So pick up the phone and give us a call. 216-539-7535. 216-539-7535 is the number to call. Welcome into the Sports Fix. As I said, J-Rocc here with you. Jerry Myers kicking things off. Welcome in live, whether you're listening on the sportsfix.net, on any of our digital applications, live on TuneIn, in the TuneIn radio app worldwide, on Spreaker and Mixler, and shout out to everybody in the chat room on Mixler, and on the website. Hey, when you're listening on the website, you can jump in that Mixler chat room too. The little box right there at the top of your screen. Just start talking to us. Type in your comments and it'll pop up with everybody else there. So welcome in all of you listening live, and everybody on digital delay 24/7 on iHeartRadio, the world's largest internet radio provider, on iTunes and Stitcher Radio and SoundCloud and all of the various podcast platforms and downloads and subscriptions, and however in the world you're listening to the Sports Fix. Thank you guys so much for being with us once again today. Phone lines, as I said, 216-539-7535, 216-539-7535. Hit us up on social media if you can't get to the phone. Facebook.com/The Sports Fix. On Twitter, tweet with us at The Sports Fix CLE. All easy ways to stay in touch with the show. Facebook.com/The Sports Fix. Tweet with us on Twitter at The Sports Fix CLE. I love when I say that, on Twitter. Like, it's the only, like, if there's another place to tweet with me, let me know. Otherwise, I'm just totally screwing that up every time I say that. Email me, thesportsfix@AOL.com. Always to stay in touch with the show, and the website, as we said, thesportsfix.net. Hey, you know what, real quick, you know what, I'll talk a little bit about it later. Let's talk about the Indians. Start things off. First things here, the Indians, as they started things off last night, come back home here, and you've got the Angels. And I'll tell you what, we talked about how it was not the results the Indians have been looking for in their previous encounters with the Angels. But last night, Indians continue the roll at home. They've now won 10 in a row. 22-11, best home winning percentage in the majors, and really they're riding that thing there. They've got themselves back up over 500 now, and again, like I said, Trevor Bauer, 4-3 victory, but it had to be late fourth, maybe early fifth inning when I said, okay, this is probably going to be, I said fifth inning, if he can get us through 5 here, maybe he'll go a batter into the 6th inning or something like that, and get us, close enough that the bullpen can take care of the rest. Because I'm telling you, Jerry goes, what do you think, Dad? Can we get him through 7? And I'm like, no way. But sure enough, 119 pitches, man. And he was probably at 80-ish, somewhere in that area when Jerry and I were talking about that. So, goes up another 30-plus pitches beyond that, gets you not only his career high, but as I said, the most the Indians have allowed a starter to go this season. And hopefully we see that. And, of course, the pitchers have to come through too. But hopefully we're getting to that point in the season where they'll start stretching guys a little bit longer, getting a little bit more out of these guys. But again, the consistency has to be there. You can't let a guy go that long if he's not taking care of his business. But Bauer goes 6 2/3 innings. As I said, career long performance for him. 3 runs, 6 strikeouts, and then I think even better is you add Carlos Carrasco. He comes in, pitches the final 2 1/3 innings, not only gets his first career save, gets a couple of strikeouts, and look at him. We talked about, I don't know, it was like Thursday or Friday last week, that Carrasco's been on a kind of a quiet run, just kind of really, and maybe, of course you wished it would have been in the rotation with the arm and the talent that he's got, but, maybe you have found the role for him, which is why so many people said, hey, let's try him in the bullpen, because look at him, his last 13, almost 14 innings now, 13 2/3 innings, he's given up 1 run, he's got 15 strikeouts. And then Santana, hey, Dan Wismar yesterday mentioned Santana and how great it's been, and look at him, he's now up to 13 of his last 39, including the home run that turned out to be the game winner yesterday for the Indians. We'll continue talking about more of that, but I want to talk to you. I'm going to go to the phone lines. Caller, you're first up on the Sports Fix.
You mean me?
That's you, if you're the one that I'm talking to right now.
J-Rocc, Daddy, Big Daddy of Destruction, coordinator of the madness. This is Ron Graham.
What's up, Ron? How's it going?
It's great. It's great. I always feel good after an Indians victory, and I did want to ask you a couple of questions about that.
Let's do it.
Specifically about Carlos Carrasco, because you know that I've been beaten up on Carrasco probably about as much as any of the fans in the chat room.
You sure have.
Do you think that the thing that Carrasco needed most was, like you said, this quiet run, gain a little bit of confidence?
I mean, you could say that, but there's been times that we've seen him that do what he does, even as a starter. So maybe you're right, but I don't know. I mean, but I do think that guys' confidence is a big part of what they do and finding a role. And sometimes, I mean, some guys just, it doesn't translate in certain ways, but it seems like, at least for now. I mean, really, and that's all you can do is deal with this season and dealing with getting through, and you've got to get the most you can out of him. But I don't know. But he's definitely quietly got himself in. And I think that's the thing. You know what? Role players. I wanted to mention this because so many times people use that term like it's a disrespectful thing, like it's a bad thing, like you're not a complete player. But, the key to winning in sports, in any sport, is role players. And it's not guys who, this guy can only do this. But what it is he can kind of do a little bit of everything. But that one thing, he does it better or as good as everyone else, because that's the key, is having guys that do at least one thing better than almost. If you could be an average or even above average, starting pitcher, or you can, find a role where you're really a game changer for a team coming out of the bullpen, then that's your role. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I think I hear a lot of times people say that guy's a role player, but they say it in a dismissive way. That's not a bad thing in certain, ways to look at it. But maybe that's it. Maybe you find that spot. But I don't know. All I know is for this season, that's what he's going to have to do, because there's no way, he's going to get into barring several injuries and things going wrong, that they go backwards, because once you make that move, you kind of make it. But man, he seems to be getting some confidence here and feeling good. And hey, man, if you can do that, then take it and run with it for this season, and then figure out what we do with him after that.
All right. Well, let's assume for the moment that the role that Carrasco plays as the role player is the guy who brings you the long save like he did last night. Who was the last guy playing for the Indians that you really thought would be that you think was really the go-to guy for the long save?
Man, long saves, man. I mean, that's such a
I
lost
can't think of
art.
anyone maybe other than Paul Offenmacher or something like that.
I mean, that's a lost art in today's, with the era of specializing everybody for an inning. I mean, even the Indians love to do that. If they had their way, they got a guy for the 7th, for the 8th, for the 9th, and a lot of teams like to do that. You don't see. Offenmacher's a good one to drop, because there's not a lot of guys whose role is to go. It used to be when bullpens were not what they are now, and when starters went longer, that a lot of your save guys would go those last couple of innings if the starter needed somebody, But man, you're right. It's probably I really can't think of anybody since then that would fit that role. So you're probably right.
All right. Well, then we got something for the chat room guys to get in on, huh?
Bruce Wood, where are you at? I don't know. I think he's right, though. Offenmacher, I don't know. Because you just don't see that a lot in baseball. Name me a lot of guys that specialize or that teams that allow guys to go even the 2-inning save. A lot of teams, the 2-inning save is even a no-no. But, so not necessarily going with the trend of doing what Carrasco did last night, but it was key last night. I mean, that bullpen was fried. And really, not just last night. You have got to find a way to get you through a stretch of a week, 4 or 5 games here where you're getting this, where you're using a guy out of the bullpen and your starter is getting you through 7 or so, because you've got to kind of rebuild this bullpen here for the stretch run. I mean, you don't want to fry them, and then come July and August and September, I mean, these guys are on fumes.
All right, J-Rocc. That was all I wanted to bring up. I'm going to free up the phone lines so you could talk to the others, but you're having another great show.
Well, thank you very much, my man. I appreciate it. Great way to start the show.
All right, take care.
All right, that's my man Ron. Hey, you can tweet with him. He runs the Twitter account for us during the live shows. Tweet at the SportsFix CLE. I'm going to get Jeff Gorman on the phone here. We're going to take a break. We're going to continue the Indians conversation right where I left off, including Michael Brantley. Scary there, as you saw last night, those of you watching the game. Jerry, my son, I love to just think back to the comments he makes live during the game. They were talking about the way it happened over there at first base, and how that had happened to somebody else before. And Jerry goes, look, man, he's known for it. He takes guys out over there at first base. I'm like, okay, let's not look for conspiracy theory everywhere we turn. But sometimes accidents just happen. But a scary moment nonetheless. Brantley had to come out of the game. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about Tony Gwynn and Pete Rose and the Indians' latest and so much more with Jeff Gorman from Indians101.com joining us next live here on the Sports Fix.
The sun came out today. We're born again. There's new grass on the field. Round the third and headed for
The Sports Fix, the show that asks the question,
what you talking about, Will? What you talking about, Will? What you talking about? What you talking about? What you talking about, Will? What you talking about? What you talking about, Will? What you talking about? What you talking about, Will?
We'll be right back.
Before we go to the break, guys, I want to talk to you just a second about our friends at GV Art and Design. Baseball's here once again. Cleveland, of course, excited, and GV Artwork teaming up with the Indians, and they're both going to knock it out of the park this season. And listen to some of the new designs they've got for Cleveland baseball fans everywhere. They've dug out an old classic, and they're bringing the heat with the new Wild Thing, Give 'em the Heater Ricky design. GV Artwork is teaming up with Cleveland fan favorite Michael Brantley and created a custom Dr. Smooth t-shirt. Plus, don't forget, they've got the Cleveland That I Glove collection, new tribal and Cleveland That I Love designs for women, and so much more. You can get GV Artwork designs on the website, gvartwork.com. And don't forget to use the sales code FIX10, that's FIX10, and you'll save 10% on your purchase. Or you can check out their new store in Lakewood on Detroit Avenue. Check them out in the Indians team shops and so much more. Cleveland That we all love, GV Art and Design. It's not just a shirt, it's a statement.
Hello, Cleveland. This is WWE Hall of Famer Mick Foley, and you are listening to the Sports Fix. Yeah!
The engines are cranking and purring, and that can only mean one thing. Bike nights are back at Harry Buffalo North Olmsted. Rev up your hogs and head on down to Harry Buffalo North Olmsted every Monday night. Enjoy $3 drinks and beers, $5 pizzas, and crazy wing specials for all bikers, all on their open patio. Woo-hoo! Hot bikes, good friends, and great times are waiting for you. 4824 Great Northern Boulevard, right outside Great Northern Mall. Monday bike nights at Harry Buffalo, the proud sponsor of the Sports Fix. Sports Fix listeners, like us on Facebook today. Facebook.com/The Sports Fix. Have you gotten your copy of Cleveland's Finest yet? Highlighting the best moments, players, and media members in Cleveland sports history? In-depth personal interviews with some of the top names in Cleveland sports fill the pages of this incredible book. Cleveland's Finest by Vince McKee is this year's must-have book for every Cleveland sports fan. Available now at Amazon.com. Get your copy today.
You're listening to the Sports Fix.
Indian fever. Catching fire with everyone. Indian fever. You can be part of the fun. You're the winner at every game.
Welcome back into the Sports Fix Live here on the SportsFix.net and across all the other platforms, live and delayed. J-Rocc back with you guys as we roll on here on this Tuesday afternoon, getting ready to go to the phone line. So phones are shut down to you guys, but you can keep the conversation going on Facebook, Facebook.com/The Sports Fix. On Twitter, tweet with us at The Sports Fix CLE. We're going to go to the phones and continue the Indians conversation, fresh off the beginning of the homestand yesterday, talking some Indians baseball with my man Jeff Gorman from Indians101.com. I'm going to go to the phone lines here. Jeff, how you doing, my man?
I'm doing great, J-Rocc. Yesterday was a wonderful day. Got to see the USA get the big win, and then the Indians win it too. So both of them were pretty tight, but they both went the right way, so you can't argue with that.
Thank you for bringing that up, because I actually went to the phone lines in the first segment, and I did not get to that before we went to the break. I wanted to bring that up because I mentioned, of course, Jurgen Klinsmann, the coach there and of the U.S. team, and his comments that his team had no chance to win. And yesterday, hey, just like we talk about the Spurs bouncing back, the last two times the U.S. was dropped from the World Cup, and I do know this, even though I'm not a huge soccer buff or anything, but it was Ghana that did it, so here they come, and they kind of exercised that demon there, even though it came at a physical price. I know that at least 3 or 4 of the U.S. players got banged up pretty good in that one, so it may hurt them going forward, but for at least the first one out, they got the victory there in what is it, the group play round. So, but it kind of ticked me off. I mentioned it the last yesterday, or I believe it was. I'm just not a big fan of your coach coming out and telling the world that, hey man, we're just here for the ride. We're here to check things out and eat some catering, and that's about it, man. We're not really here to win anything. But so at least from that aspect, good to see them come out, win the first one. We'll see what happens. I think, what do they got? Portugal next, and I think that's Sunday. So they've got a few days to recover and try to get healthy. But yeah, man, good win for the Americans there, man.
Yeah, I missed the last part of what you said, but yeah, maybe if their coach was an American, he would remember what happened, in 1980 and realize that, miracles can happen in American sports, especially if things, break the way they did. If you're going to the group of death, you got to win that game against Ghana because it's going to be tough against Germany and Portugal, and they did it. So he should really show some confidence in these guys, especially if he had enough confidence to not bring Landon Donovan along and bring everybody else. So he must think these guys know what they're doing. So they got off to a pretty darn good start.
Jeff Gorman, not afraid to take a shot at anybody. I love it, man. Hey, I'll tell you what, though, man. Good times, good stuff going on. And, hey, Indians, we were talking about it before the break, and, last night, a good way to start this homestand. Attendance, hey, not bad for a Monday night. Of course, weekdays, tougher, but I think they were around 15,000 there. And I definitely think that if they play well here, this series with the Angels, that we're looking at some nice crowds and some nice weather coming up for the Detroit series, but you don't want to go too far ahead. Hey, I thought it was good last night. We talked about, I mentioned it in the previous segment, about the pitching, carrying things through there. Very important there, but scary moment offensively. Of course, Michael Brantley has been, the one true consistency besides Lonnie Chisenhall's ridiculous start. The one guy that's been there all season long has been Brantley. And last night, definitely a bit of a scary moment when he comes out of the game, especially at first, because nobody was sure. It took a matter of 5 or 10 minutes to kind of figure out why he came out of the game, and then turned out to see that it was he got knocked in the head there. And of course, head injuries always not only tricky because they take you out temporarily, but as everybody knows, one usually leads to a future problem. So never good to see that, especially when we're talking about Michael Brantley and the way he's been playing.
That's right. He has really been the glue that's kept this team going through good times and bad. It's like I've said many times, if it was for him, the team would really be in the dumps. But they apparently, his early tests from a concussion standpoint checked out okay, so hopefully he won't be gone for too long, although it wouldn't be a bad idea to maybe sit him out for today and maybe get some other people into the lineup. But, he's been able to keep this team going when, like we've said, people have been ups and downs. I mean, Chisenhall had that amazing day, but he's really fallen off since then. And then you've got other people kind of starting to come along, including Santana, which we've been just begging to happen. So hopefully, that we're really seeing pretty much the way this whole team is constructed, where you're not really seeing everybody all on the same page at the same time, but it's like enough guys are able to get hot to keep them going. And again, sometimes it's just barely when you have, Santana hitting the home run yesterday, and then Swisher on Sunday, he really needed that one.
Yeah, really, because he was having a pitiful weekend before. It makes you kind of forget about it just a little bit there with the way that ended. But yeah, going back to Brantley, and again, as you said, cleared his initial concussion test. With that, I wouldn't be surprised if they erred on the side of caution, even if he was feeling completely better today, because you never want to. You got to be careful with those things, most definitely. And really, at that point, it's just a matter of when you have no symptoms, then you can start getting back into what you're doing. And each player, there's really no time frame on that. I mean, he could, be one or 2 days off and be back in there. He could be back in there today. Me personally, I wouldn't, because I know, and I think the Indians may do that, because I know that with head injuries, you do have to be careful, because you can take something that is temporary and make it a more long-term problem. But there's no, that's one of the ones where you pull a hammy, the time frame. Usually it's this long. With the head injuries and concussions, it really is on a case-by-case basis. But at least early on, good to see that at most he should only miss perhaps a day or two here before he gets back in, if that, at least according to everything we hear, which is good, because he's been driving the ship there offensively and hitting just fantastically. And you know what? I want to use that to segue off a little bit. We're talking about hitting, and I wanted to bring this up. Of course, yesterday, Tony Gwynn passes away, and 54 years old. And I'll tell you, they always say, there's silver linings and things like that, and I don't know if that's what you look for, but one of the things that it's going to bring to the focus, and I think baseball's done a good job of that over the, they've banned the chewing tobacco, but I mean, when you look at, he was one of the guys that firmly believed, he didn't hide from it, the fact that what ended up being his undoing health-wise came, he believed, from chewing tobacco throughout his career. And as we've seen, Major League Baseball has gone through a lot of steps to try to regulate that. But that's one of those things that at least comes out of that is, because a lot of times it's different when a guy says, hey, I'm pretty sure this is why I ended up in the situation I was in, but, never want to see somebody go so early. But Tony Gwynn, I just remember growing up, and every year it was like a foregone conclusion that Tony Gwynn was going to lead the league in hitting. Like everybody else was playing for number 2 when I was growing up, because I grew up during his heyday, and think about it. To this day, goes back, he's still, unless I'm wrong, I don't think anybody's come close. He's still the closest to 400 since it's been done, when he got, 394 back in, I think it was 94. But just an amazing hitter and an even better person, too, from everything you hear behind the scenes as well.
Oh, yeah, and he was just so much fun to watch. I mean, we talk about, kids growing up watching baseball. He's so one you want to model yourself after, not just as a hitter, but as a player and a person. And, it's great that he got to see his son become a major leaguer as well. And, Justin Masterson talked about him, because the one year that Tony Gwynn was coaching at San Diego State, Masterson was there, and he said that was really very helpful for Masterson, just how to conduct himself as a professional. And it was, another thing with Gwynn is he was such a throwback from a couple of standpoints. Again, you talk about his consistent hitting. I mean, he, aside from his rookie year, he never hit less than 309. I mean, that's amazing. I mean, sometimes these days, hey, someone hit 300. That's a good year. He always hit 300. Like you said before, it was a foregone conclusion. And the other thing is he stayed with the same team for his entire career. 20 years, all with the Padres. I mean, we just don't see that anymore. And that's why people like Cal Ripken and, George Brett and Tony Gwynn, they achieved that iconic status in their cities because they just become synonymous with that team. And that's how people get to fall in love with the team, when they have, a player that's maybe their favorite guy, and he's always there, and he just sticks with them all the way through. And that's really something that would be great if we saw it again, but that's really like a throwback to like the 80s and 90s, to have a guy like Tony Gwynn.
It really is, too, and that's lost. I mean, that's one of the things, we talk about, guys like LeBron doing what he did. But the guys, there's something to the one franchise guys. And I know it is like a lost art today. I mean, unless you get a rare guy like, Tim Duncan and Kobe Bryant with the Lakers the whole time. But there really is something to that, and you see it less and less. Those guys, like you said, that are attached, whether it's Ripken to the Orioles, George Brett, where they spent an entire, and not just a short career, an entire career with one team, especially being at the level that he was at, where really you didn't have to stay, especially, and think about it too. And I again, this is off the top of my head. I don't have 20 years worth of franchise records as far as wins and losses in front of me. But if I remember right, the San Diego Padres during his era were not consistent good teams at all. Am I wrong about that? But I don't remember a lot of really powerful Padres teams during his career.
Right, I think the only exception I can think of is that one year they went to the World Series against the Tigers. I want to say it was 84.
Right. Well, I'm saying, during the bulk of his career, weren't the Padres just an also-ran kind of a franchise?
Yeah.
There?
Usually they weren't that good.
He stayed with a team that was not a consistent, and I get it that there was differences in free agency, and as contracts and collective bargaining agreements made it easier for guys to go all over the place, but still, for a guy to not only stay with one team, but to stay with one team regardless of whether they're winning or losing, that again talks to the person and how he feels about, just in general, the belief of the person speaks to that as well.
Right, and it's so nice that you don't have that kind of asterisk like you had with Karl Malone, going to the Lakers at the end of his career instead of staying all the way with the Jazz. It's something that, because basically you can just tell, even by looking at Tony Gwynn, that he was a happy guy. He was just very content with what he was doing and where he was. He wasn't out chasing the last dollar. He wasn't even out chasing the ring. He was just happy to be playing the game of baseball, and you could just, we don't know him as well as other people, because the people in San Diego, but you could just see, watching on TV, you could just see the joy on his face, and that's one of the things that just made him so much fun to watch, aside from being just an amazing hitter.
And I'll tell you, man, even the last, think about it, 41 years old, he's still, and then granted, this is a small sample size. He only batted 102 times that season. But in 2001, at 41 years old, he still raked at a 324 clip coming down the pike of his career. At 37 in 1997, he's hitting 372, man. That's something to be said. And then, of course, his peak, 394, the closest, as I said, that anyone's come to hitting 400 since 400's been done. Again, not enough can be said, but I think back and it was a foregone conclusion. When you get those baseball cards that have the stats at the end of the season and you're collecting your set, you knew that Tony Gwynn was always going to be on the hitting leaders one, always.
Every single time. There's so much. That's right. Definitely back to the days of baseball cards, which they're still around, but they're not as big as they used to be among this generation.
Yes.
But he's the kind of person who he'd always be making on the All-Star team, because he just had that kind of consistency that even if he was the only Padre on the All-Star team, he was going to make it there.
There's people sitting at the house listening to us right now going, baseball cards with stats? What are you talking about, man? I know. That's how I learned, besides my dad. I can tell you that the second biggest place that I learned about, at least baseball for sure, was from baseball cards, man. That's where you know what I mean? I don't know. Am I crazy here, Jeff Gorman? Am I nuts?
Oh, no, you're not. In fact, that's when we collected baseball cards, because we love baseball, not because it was, a collector's item or an investment. When somebody would get traded to the Mets, I would write Mets in marker over the guy's face.
Bro, I had complete sets. I got into card collecting during my childhood. That was, my dad and I were looking for a hobby, and we did, but we got into it when you collected cards because you collected cards, not because of what they were worth. Although he was cognizant enough to go, if you keep these long enough, they may be worth something, but he had no clue where that was really going to go. And I'll never forget, I thought the coolest thing to me every year, bro, was just getting all the Indians, having the entire Indian set of whoever was on the team and I'll tell you what, the most valuable cards in my folder were Andy Allenson, and you know what I mean? And Greg Swindell and all these guys, and you know what I mean? The ones that if you look up the price guide, they're under common cards worth 5 cents or something like that. And, to me, I'm not parting. No, you cannot have my O to B McDowell. What are you talking about, man? But anyway, and that's kind of that. So Tony Gwynn it threw me right back to my childhood, and then of course thinking back all this stuff we're talking about here. So definitely a loss for baseball, a loss for everybody there involved when you lose somebody like that, especially so young. It just shows you, man, life is short, brother. Life is short. no matter how much money you got, no matter how many people know your name, whether it's 1 million people or nobody, it doesn't matter, man. When the day comes, the day comes. So, appreciate it. Have fun. Listen to more sports fix. Do stuff like that. But anyways, hey, and you know what? Since we're talking about, we're in the old days. Let's stay in the old days for a minute, man. Pete Rose. I talked about it a couple of months ago. I mentioned when I saw the story that he was going to manage an independent league game. And, of course, minor leagues they're the kings of coming up with the gimmicks, but Pete Rose, even if it was just for one night, just looking at it, the picture, you go, oh man, Pete Rose back in the game of baseball here, and he's holding on to hope, man. You listen to him talk, and he's holding on to hope that come January, that depending on who that new commissioner is going to be, that maybe he gets one more roll of the dice. But and listen. And I'm not going to do the whole thing because I get it that there's a very polarizing argument. But I'm curious where you fall in, Jeff, because to me, knowing that we have a truckload of cheaters that will end up being honored in this way and that way, and even if they're not in the Hall of Fame, they're not banned from baseball. Some of them get jobs teaching other players how to hit and all of this stuff going on. Do you think the day is ever going to come that baseball says, all right, Pete Rose has paid enough of a price for what he did, or no, maybe not? And, Jonathan Knight and I, man, we'll get into it over this because he goes, listen, man, he gambled, he cheated, and I get that. But looking at the things now, it just makes you wonder. I mean, to me, if you're going to continue to be staunch against Pete Rose, then you should be more active in banning other people. So I just think, I'm curious what you think, but I think maybe the price has been paid. I mean, had he committed involuntary manslaughter, he'd be out by now. You know what? He'd have gotten parole. He would be living his life, rehabilitated. And so it makes you wonder if maybe the time hasn't come to say, okay, you paid your price. Because that's still a hell of a price. I mean, how long will he have been banned from the game? 25 plus years. So that's a long price to pay. And I get it that he did something, that was against the rules. But that is a long price to pay for any crime. What do you think about Pete Rose?
Well, I have a soft spot in my heart for Pete Rose because he was one of my favorite players growing up. In fact, me and our friends, we used to call diving headfirst, sliding headfirst, that was called a Pete Rose dive.
Oh, yeah.
So, he was just, obviously, it's iconic even as far as how you play the game, considering his Charlie Hustle and, knocking down Ray Fosse in the All-Star game, and just the way he played just 100% all out, not to mention, the 4,000 hits. So I think you're right. I mean, yes, obviously he needed to be banned from the game, and yes, what he did was very, very wrong. But I think, like you said, I think he has paid his dues. It's been it's been 25 years. I think he's really, really been punished, and I think we're at the point where you can go ahead, I think, and bring him back. If you have to ban him from actually being a major league manager, I think you can do that. But of course, he can be a coach, he can be a special hitting instructor, he can just be an ambassador to the game for, Major League Baseball as a whole, or for the Reds or something. He can be around the game, and I think that as long as he's actually not managing a major league team, I think you can go ahead and bring him back and let him do pretty much anything else. It has been a really long time. He has admitted it. It took a very long time, but he's admitted it. He's expressed remorse, and obviously, there's a lot of people who are not saints who are in the Hall of Fame, and I think that it's time for Pete Rose to go into the Hall of Fame. We know what he is, and it's not like that's being hidden from the public. I think that he should go into the Hall of Fame based on exactly who he is, and of course, not as a manager really, but as a hitter and as a player.
I'm going to go a step further than you, though. I don't see not that I think anybody would hire, I mean, at this stage, being away from the game that long, I don't think you have to worry about anybody hiring Pete Rose as a manager in 2014, but I don't think that you even put that restriction on him because it doesn't, I don't think it matters, but I don't even think you put that restriction on him because in the last few years, we've watched the San Francisco Giants and the St. Louis Cardinals trot out a couple of the biggest, most notorious cheaters in the game. And in Mark McGwire's case, he point blank came clean and admitted what he had done. And I remember the spring training press conference. I think it was 2 or 3 years ago with McGwire. I can't remember exactly which one, but
I remember that.
But he was, you know, and I remember all the articles about the uncomfortable questions and the truth is being answered. But he's on the payroll and he's allowed to be a part of baseball and a part and you know, we were talking about Tony Gwynn in his 41 years old raking 320 or whatever. I think the opposite of that. I think back to the last year of Mark McGwire's career when he had the most statistical, his stat line was such an anomaly. I don't know if it could ever be repeated. I believe that he only had 20, 30 some hits for the whole season. They were all home runs. He hit like 100, but they were all home runs. And I'm like, come on, man. Like, this is ridiculous. This is a guy who's on his last legs. I mean, if he wasn't on the juice, his career wouldn't have lasted half of what it did. Regardless, you know, Barry Bonds I look at a little differently because I think had he not juiced, he would have still been a Hall of Famer, but he wouldn't have been an 800 home run Hall of Famer that walking around looking like the Incredible Hulk, you know? But still, both of those guys trotted back out there, put back on the payroll. Now, because the voters have decided that we're not going to vote you in, that's one thing. But baseball has no ban on them. Baseball has nothing. Even the ones who, I mean, Manny Ramirez has been caught how many times cheating now, and he is now back. I'm not saying this. I think that guys are given second chances and should be given second and third chances. And I mean, how many guys? I'm not going to name, not imputing anybody, but there's managers in Major League Baseball who have had notorious drug problems, who had to leave the game and clean themselves up. What I'm saying is everybody gets a second and a third and a fourth chance, no matter how egregious the offenses you did were. It didn't matter. You got an opportunity to come back in the game. And I think after 25 years, you know, especially because, man, and I'm surprised it hasn't come out more, in today's era of online digital betting and gambling and things like that, I'm telling you, if you think that in the last 25 years, Pete Rose is the last player to bet on a baseball game, I'm pretty sure that we'd be wrong about that. But it doesn't matter. He was 100% wrong for what he did. But 25 years. I mean, my point is if we're in the criminal justice system, anything short of murder, rape, and armed robbery, and maybe even some cases of armed robbery, not even 25 years, he would be out on just about any crime he could have committed 25 years ago, but he is still banned from the game of baseball. That's kind of where I'm at with it.
Right, and it's a very good point you bring about Bonds and McGwire not being banned from the game. They could technically start managing tomorrow if somebody wanted to hire them, when arguably they had more of a deleterious effect on the history of the game than Pete Rose. I mean, he managed, I guess, bet on maybe just a handful of Reds games during some season. What Bonds and McGwire and them did was they pretty much ruined the home run record, both for a single season and for career. I mean, we're never going to know if somebody could have legitimately hit more home runs than Hank Aaron in a career or than Roger Maris in one season. We're never going to know because they've already blown past those on inflated statistics, and we're never going to get that back. And that's something that's always going to be an asterisk on the entire history of the game. And that's really kind of worse overall than what Rose did. So, yeah, that's a very good point as far as, you know, those guys aren't banned, so why should Pete Rose be banned? I think that is another reason why, you know, I think Rose has probably been punished enough.
I stand and I applaud what you just said, and I'll add to it this. People, because here, JK, here's the biggest argument that he comes back to me with about Pete Rose is the gambling on the game and betting on your own team and how the risk is there of a degenerate gambler, sabotaging his own team. But nowadays, do you know how many examples you and I could sit here and throw out? Because we hear it, and the media just throws it out there like there's nothing you can do about it. How many basketball players have single-handedly, legitimately, intentionally sabotaged seasons and not played to their full potential? And not just basketball players, football players, baseball players, etc. How many have been mad about their contract or upset about this or mad at management about that and sabotaged a team or didn't play to their best or faked injuries to the detriment of their team so that they didn't have to play? To me, those are all the same thing that we're talking about when we talk about, betting against your team and, controlling the way the wins and losses fall out. That is no different than these individual players who decide, you know what, I'm going to go show this team that they've been spoiled by me, and I'm going to go out here and I'm going to play, but I'm just going to play half energy because I still got paid anyway. That's the same thing to me as a guy. And then that's the other thing, and this doesn't make it better, but at least Pete Rose bet on his own team to win. Now granted, there's some people that'll say there's no proof that he didn't bet against the Reds and all of that, but I say even if he did, which I don't know if he did, but I'm just telling you that you and I could sit here and probably find hundreds of examples of media around the world, sports world, including Cleveland in 2010, when we all know there's a reason that they say LeBron James quit. It's not because he left Cleveland. It's because he did quit during his final playoff series here. He made the decision I did not even do that on purpose. I swear to God. He made the decision to make sure that the Cleveland Cavaliers did not get the best of LeBron's abilities during that final playoff series, and that affected an entire franchise. So I'm just saying, that's one example. You and I could do 100 just in the last 5 years alone of players who have done crap like that, and yet still, Pete Rose is out. So I think that no matter what the argument, now the time comes to go, you know what? And here's the other thing, too, is I'd rather they do it now than wait until the day after Pete Rose passes away, and then they say we should have done this already, and now we're going to let him be inducted, because I can see that happening. I can see a posthumous not forgiving, but allowing of him to be inducted in the Hall of Fame. And I say if that happens, that would be a shame. If you're going to do it while he's alive. If you don't, then don't do it after he passes away, whenever that is, because that would be disingenuous as could be. If you're going to keep him out, then he's out. But if you're going to eventually lighten up anyway, then do it while he can take advantage of it and enjoy it. And knowing Pete Rose, he'll make quite a few bucks off of it too. But hey, that's the price that, hey man, Pete Rose has never found an autograph he couldn't sell or a baseball he couldn't sign. And that's fine, because you got to make a living. But, he already signs it, Hall of Famer Pete Rose, so you're not really giving him anything that he's not taking credit for anyway. But I wanted to talk a little bit about that, because when I saw that and I saw him talking about, well, hopefully with Bud going out, if the next guy is Bud's friend, I'm probably screwed. But if he's not, then maybe I get a chance. And I think if worse comes to worse, Pete Rose has at least earned the opportunity to sit down with Major League Baseball and state his case and say the things that we're saying and lay it on the table and see if they can't come to some kind of a settlement here. I just think that 25 years is a good price to pay for something. And I know people will say, well, other gamblers paid their whole career. That's great. But what rules we stuck to in the 40s, clearly they're not sticking to them now. You know what I mean? So it's a shame that some of those guys didn't get back in the game. I understand Shoeless Joe and all of that, but we're talking about the difference between something that happened in 1918 and something that happened in 2014, So a little bit of a difference, and I'm willing to bet if you could go back, a lot of things would have been done differently if you're looking in hindsight. But this is one you can control. Get it right, because Pete Rose, he may have gambled, but he played the game the right way, unlike a lot of people who are sitting on posters of little kids' rooms right now who did not play the game right, but they are sitting there paying or reaping all the rewards.
Right. It's a very tough position when you put yourself in the moral arbiter of people. If you're going to lay down some moral sanctions on somebody, you better do it on everybody. And if you don't, then it doesn't really ring true, especially, like you said, the worst thing would be is if he passes away and then they induct him. I think everybody would roll their eyes at that. What I would really like to see is to see him get reinstated and see him become eligible for the Hall of Fame ballot, and then see how they vote. See, if he gets in right away or if it's about 50-50. There'd be a really interesting debate going on from there, but at least he'd have a chance,
And I'll tell you what, just like Mark McGwire and just like Barry Bonds, these guys get brought in. The Indians bring in a ton of past guys during spring training to be temporary instructors. And I know Pete Rose is up there in age, but he still has that spark and that heart. And I saw him not that long ago at a thing, and he's still that guy. He could still teach. I'll tell you what, you could create a few more Jason Kipnises if you just had guys sit down and listen to Pete Rose, not teach you how to hit, not teach you how to field, although I'm sure he could maybe help some of these Indians with that, but just teach how to hustle and how to just throw everything up against the wall, because that's what he was. He was Charlie Hustle. And with Kipnis, with his crazy style and these guys that hustle and dive and get in the dirt and slide and all of that, that's Pete Rose coming through in some of today's players. And so I think, even from that perspective, forget the Hall of Fame, I think if Manny Ramirez, and forgive me, Indians fans, because I loved the time Manny Ramirez was in Cleveland, but Manny Ramirez's biggest success was steroid-driven. As much as he was a great natural hitter, his big success was steroid-driven. If people feel that there is still something that he can teach younger players, there has to be something that a guy like Pete Rose can teach to somebody too. And maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think so, man. And I think that I just think the price has been paid. That's all. Like, hey, I'm not saying forgive him. I'm just saying give him a parole. I think that he's now the old guy. He was the young guy on the cell block coming in, sharpening his shake-up. But now he's been there so long, he's making grilled cheese on the radiator, and he's a lifer now, man. He's the old guy, ready to let him out. Let him out. He's going to look at the sunshine and go, man, I haven't seen that in 25 years. Let him go enjoy some sunshine. But anyways, that's my little Pete Rose chat there.
Yeah, I think that would be great. I mean, considering, the different things other people have done, the longer you just keep him out, the more it seems like he's being singled out. And, of course, that's not really fair.
Oh, man, I'll tell you. Oh, you know what? I've got an announcement here for you guys in just a second. But before I do that, let's wrap up here with Jeff Gorman. Let's get back to the Indians as we let you go here. Josh Tomlin, Matt Shoemaker going at it tonight for the Indians, round 2 of this series. And then you've got Masterson and C.J. Wilson, McAllister, and Garrett Richards going on Thursday tonight. Josh Tomlin gets a chance to go out there and see if the Tribe can get another one here as they continue that home winning streak, continue to stretch the best home record in baseball, and build some momentum for that Tigers series right around the corner.
That's right. It's amazing how things have worked out, considering we were at 10.5 games behind the Tigers and then dropped that down to 7.5, and now the Royals are actually a half game behind them, and we're only 2.5. So if we can continue to do well against the Angels, we'd be possibly in a position to challenge the Tigers at home for the division lead, then you really see some people come out to the stadium, because that would be a huge jump forward. As good as last year was, but to be competing with the Tigers and and beating them sometimes instead of losing to them almost every time like last year, I think that would really be an amazing boost. Like right at the beginning of the summer, I think it's going to be the first official week of summer, and I think you can really light a fire under these fans to see how far this team has come, especially considering all the adversity that they've dealt with in the first 2 months or so of the season.
I'll tell you, you talk about that Detroit and Kansas City, just to show you how much Detroit has fallen off and the Central has really gotten competitive, as we've already talked about, like the Indians and the Royals and stuff. But look at Detroit and Kansas City. Detroit has dominated them. They didn't drop a game all season long. And then look at yesterday, Verlander continuing to come back down to earth, I guess, from the stratosphere that he was in. He's now fallen below 500, gave up 7 earned runs in back-to-back starts for the first time in his career. Kansas City got to him for 12 hits, struck. Oh man, they got to him yesterday. And I'll tell you what, Not only that, but it kind of puts in perspective, too, the Indians running into that buzzsaw there in the middle of that road trip with Kansas City. I think Kansas City is really starting to get some we talked about confidence. They're starting to get some confidence in themselves, and, offensively, I think they believe that they can get to anybody. They had no problems with the Indians. Here you see they got to Verlander, but Kansas City is getting comfortable, and I feel good about that. I said during the spring, everybody else is like, yeah, this guy, that. I said, I'm telling you, watch out, Kansas City. But I do think that their pitching may betray them. But so far, even yesterday, Detroit got to them in the ninth for 6. But when you're up 11-2, it's okay to give up a 6-run inning. But they did get to them there a little bit. So man, it's all tightening up together. Like you said, it's going to be interesting this weekend. But again, let's not look past, because we would be mad at the Indians if they were looking past, so we can't do that as well. You've got the Angels here and an opportunity to make it 2 in a row, make it 11 in a row at home. Josh Tomlin going out there against Shoemaker tonight. Jeff Gorman, my man, of course, the Indians in action this week. You and I will catch up on Friday. We'll talk a little Browns, and as you also do the Browns 101 thing. And speaking of, when we come back on the other side of the break, Jeff, I'll drop this for you too. Just got word from the Browns about sometime in the last segment here that Johnny Manziel has agreed to his rookie quarterback contract with the Browns. Not much. This is not like the years past when you had a lot of negotiations. These contracts are pretty predetermined now. Pretty much all you're arguing about is your signing bonus amount of money. But Manziel's contract is now taken care of. I do believe it's roughly 4 years in the $8.3 million range. I could be off, but that's for the 22nd draft pick. That is about the amount maximum that the contract can be. So roughly $2 million a year for the next 4 years. So we'll see when the number comes out. I know the Browns do not ever release the contract terms right away. Usually you got to catch up with those a little bit later. But Manziel now added under contract, and they've now got 4 or 6 draft picks under contract here. So I'm sure, I've no doubt we'll have stuff to talk about there with the Browns on Friday. But right now, Indians focuses on them tonight, looking to make it 2 in a row against the Angels. Jeff Gorman, you enjoy the game. Enjoy the rest of this homestand. You and I will catch up on Friday.
Sounds like a plan, J-Rocc. Thank you so much.
Thanks for being here. As always, a great time. And you guys can talk to Jeff, of course, on Twitter at Indians_101 and Indians101.com. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll pick up on the other side of this with Dr. Football. My man Bill Check is in the house. We'll talk about the latest with the Browns, of course, as we announced, just signing the contract with Johnny Football. Chuck Nolls. We'll talk a little bit about the passing of a legend. He's got his roots right here in Northeast Ohio. We'll talk about the O.J. Chase 20 years later and so much more. Paul Kruger, he made some Browns, some fans happy, some sad yesterday with his statements. We'll talk about all the latest. Dr. Football joining us and so much more next on the Sports Fix.
The days growing up and the first person you kiss, and as I think back, makes me wonder how the smell from a grill can spark up nostalgia. All the kids playing out front, little boys messing around with the girls playing double dutch, while the DJ spinning a tune as the old folks dance at your family reunion. Then 6 o'clock rolls around.
The Sports Fix, your choice for intelligent talk.
I'm expecting a very important delivery at the house, so could you please call me if it arrives? I'll give you my cell number. 401-555-1125.
440.
No, I was just repeating the 4. 1-4.
1-4.
Intelligent talk.
Okay, 1125.
1125. 155.
I'm not giving you quantities of the numbers. I'm giving you the numbers. 1125. Those are the last 4 numbers.
Oh, I see. 1125.
Yes. All right. Now read the number back to me.
Let me get my pen.
The Sports Fix will be right back.
Guys, want to take just a second as we head into this break and remind you about the official business printing source of the Sports Fix, our friends at Signs and Ship. Signs and Ship, I'm telling you, Chris and Pam, they've taken care of me since day one, and they can do the same for you. Whether you're a small business that's already been established and you're looking to grow to that next level and expand your business, or perhaps you've got an idea that you just know is going to be a great business and you need to figure out how to brand it and how to promote it and put it out there, Signs and Ship is the place for you. If you need a logo, they can create one for you. They have a fantastic graphic designer. Business cards, signs, banners, yard signs, mobile advertising, anything you can think of that you need to promote your business, they've got it at Signs and Ship. The best thing about them, too, is each of their locations, whether it's the home base here in Elyria, Ohio that I work with, or their spots in Virginia, Florida, and Pennsylvania, it's all local sourced. Very important to me because we all understand that small business is the lifeblood of the community. So check them out, signsandship.com, or call Chris and Pam today, 440-323-6060, the home office in Elyria, Ohio. Signs and Ship, quality printing at affordable prices.
Hi, this is Joe Tate, and you're listening to the Sports Fix.
Whether it's an oil change or a new set of tires, Quick Lane at Valley Ford Truck has you covered for your automotive car care needs. They're your neighborhood quick service experts. They also offer a low price tire guarantee. Choose from 13 brands, and if you find the same tires at a lower price within 30 days, Quick Lane at Valley Ford will refund the difference. They're open late Monday through Thursday until 9 p.m. and open early Saturday so you can check it off your to-do list and get on with your day. They also have a newly remodeled service lounge and additional service bay just for Quick Lane oil changes. Quick Lane at Valley Ford Truck is located at 5715 Canal Road, right under the 480 bridge in Valley View, just down the road from Independence. 5715 Canal Road, right under the 480 bridge in Valley View, just down the road from Independence. Come see why life is better in the Quick Lane. quicklane.com/Valley Ford Truck. That's quicklane.com/Valley Ford Truck.
Business owners and professionals, do you want to take your business, your product, your team, your event to the next level? You want to advertise right here with the Sports Fix. Our listeners are among the most loyal listeners, terrestrial or internet. The Sports Fix universe is not only the radio show, but tens of thousands of fans on Facebook and Twitter. Email me, Jerry Myers, thesportsfix@AOL.com. That's thesportsfix@AOL.com. And let me help you swing for the fences and hit it out of the park right here on the Sports Fix.
Portions of the Sports Fix brought to you by Harry Buffalo. Harry Buffalo, join the herd.
News break.
Good morning, I'm Bob Picozzi. They have 5 days off before the next match on Sunday against Portugal, and the United States sure can use the time off. In last night's World Cup opening 2-1 win over Ghana, Josie Altidore and Matt Beasler suffered hamstring injuries, and Clint Dempsey broke his nose. Dramatic header by John Brooks in the 86th minute gave the U.S. the win. Midfielder Michael Bradley says, right time, right place, right guy.
Since the first time he's come in, he's shown a commitment, a willingness, a certain amount of pride to be here, to be within this group. And obviously he's not a big talker, but everybody can see what a great guy he is. He came on in a difficult situation and did really well and got a great winner for us.
Brooks becoming the first substitute to score a goal for the U.S. in its World Cup history. 3 more matches today. Belgium, Algeria at 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Brazil, Mexico, 2:30 Eastern. Russia, South Korea, 5:30 Eastern. All 3 matches on ESPN TV and many of these ESPN radio stations. Julius Randle, who left Kentucky after his freshman season, will work out today for the Lakers. CBS Sports is reporting that the Lions have serious interest in free agent cornerback Brandon Flowers.
Sports Center brought to you by Google. Bummed you missed the latest goal because you're stuck in the car? Once you finally get to the office, go to Google, search for the latest match, and discover highlights from all the latest action. You're listening to the Sports Fix.
Welcome back to the Sports Fix Live here on the sportsfix.net. J-Rocc back with you guys. Hour 2 in full effect here. Got you some news. Now getting ready to head back into the show. Welcome back in. Whether you're listening live on the sportsfix.net on TuneIn, Spreaker, Mixler, the TuneIn radio app worldwide, however you're listening live, or welcome in all of you listening on digital delay, baby, 24/7 on iHeartRadio, the world's largest internet radio provider, on Stitcher Radio and SoundCloud. The CarPlay format on Stitcher Radio, by the way, as well, and of course on TuneIn, all the different applications and the podcast platforms, too numerous to name. Welcome in each and every one of you guys. J-Rocc back with you. Phone lines are closed because we're going to talk to my man, Dr. Football, here in just a minute, but you can keep the conversation going on Facebook, facebook.com/thesportsfix, on Twitter @thesportsfixCLE. I see Ron Graham's got the Twitter account blowing up over there right now. Good job out of him, as always, blowing things up on the Twitter account over there. Hit him up @thesportsfixCLE. Email us, thesportsfix@AOL.com. Cannot wait to hear from you guys as the show rolls on, and I can't wait to go back to the phone lines here, talk to my man, Dr. Football. Of course, Dr. Football with us every Tuesday here going on. And right before the break, as you guys heard too, mentioned that the Browns came to terms with John Manziel, the number 22 pick in the first round of the draft, with his rookie contract. It's not like it used to be. It's not a lot of haggling and debating. They argue about some offset money, and that's about it. As you see, I mean, here we are. We haven't even hit July, and I think there's like 4 first-round picks left that haven't signed their contracts yet, because there's just not a lot to argue about. The slotting has made it much easier. And I tell you, I don't know about you guys, but I'm in that camp of agreement with that. It used to drive me nuts to see a guy come in the league and be guaranteed more money before he played his first snap in the league than a guy with multiple Super Bowls and a 10 or 15-year career has ever made. And that's wrong. And it's still not perfect, but it's better. Johnny Manziel, Johnny Football, all the hype around him, he's got in NFL terms, a relatively reasonable contract. 4 years. It's unannounced, but 22 in the draft is right around 8-point-something million. So roughly $2 million a year. 4 years, $22 million. 4 years, $8 million. $2 million a year. $22 million. That should be about where it settles out. So John Manziel in camp and signed, and as I said, that leaves only a handful of first-round picks there to go. We'll continue talking about that with Dr. Football. Matter of fact, let's go to the phones. Dr. Football, Bill Checkers. How you doing, Bill?
I'm doing good, Jerry. How about you? How's your Tuesday so far?
Hey, it's a Tuesday, man. I'm here. We're rocking. Dr. Football's on the line. What? Life's good, man. Life's good.
There you go. Jerry, Manziel's contract is, usual, like you just said, for the slotting these days.
Am I right about the numbers, by the way, Bill? Bill, am I right about the numbers? Sorry? The number 22 pick is going to be somewhere around like $8.3 million for 4 years or something like that?
Yeah, he gets $8.38 million.
There you go.
$6.1 million is guaranteed, which means 3 years of the 4 years is guaranteed also, which is a historical thing because players usually don't get guaranteed years, they just get guaranteed money. But this contract has 3 years, guaranteed for him.
And again, I'm sure you're with me too, but I mean, you can see the difference. I mean, no matter where he was picked, he may have been the number 22 pick, but had this been prior to the changes in the collective bargaining agreement, especially with his off-field notoriety and name, I mean, I could easily see John Manziel's contract negotiation being protracted, ugly, and him ending up making a huge amount of money just because of the prolific nature of him off the field compared to now where there's really nothing to talk about.
Yeah, and let's face it, this all around is better for the league. It doesn't mean that the guy doesn't deserve to make more money, but it's not your first contract anymore that makes the money these days.
Right.
It's your second contract. So,
and that's the way it should be, in all honesty.
You have to play well during your first contract to earn, to get paid off in that second one, as somebody once told me.
But, I mean, that's the way it should be, in my opinion. Just looking at, as I said before I brought you up, it used to drive me nuts to see a guy come in, especially because we know the hit and miss on just in general on first-round draft picks, and I would go nuts looking at the money some of these guys would make, and then you would have a guy who's a beast, who's been in the league for a while, who's won games, who's respected everywhere, and you add all the money he's made up together, and he's not touching it at what some of these guys were getting coming in before they even even attended their first meeting in the NFL.
Yeah, and a lot of defensive linemen, especially in linebackers, because traditionally they weren't getting the same money unless they were a top 10 pick as a quarterback. Now it doesn't matter. It's what pick you're at number-wise during the first round that decides how much money you're going to get. And even with that, there's the entire rookie class salary cap that only allows you to make so much money in your first 2 years. Yeah. I think that is health-wise is better for the NFL, and regardless of what the NFLPA says, it's better for the players and it's better for the league overall financially, instead of the other way around, which is basically like baseball and basketball, where, pay me now and then pay me again later.
Right. I mean, literally just getting to the and it's like and it used to drive me nuts because the money was the opposite of the message when it came to being in the sports world, and for the teams to the players. It's that, you got paid, just for getting to the dance, where, instead of even making the first, asking the first girl to dance with you, you got paid just for walking in the door. And the logic of that was backwards. So that's one of the good things that did come out of, all the hemming and hawing and lockouts and all of the different things that have happened. Is I do think that was something that needed to be addressed. And I love the fact that, as I said, here we sit, it's not even July, and the majority of the first round is already under contract because there's just nothing for them to argue about. They found something with the offset money, you know what I mean? They found one little thing that they can negotiate about, but really other than that, man, it's pretty cut and dry, and I like it. And we avoid having to have ridiculous summertime contract talking about people that haven't even played, because that's just wasted time.
And it's funny, just before I left New York to move out here, I went to a bunch of giant charity events, as I always did when I worked back east. And you'd see a lot of former players on that circuit. And I got to be friends with Sean Landetta, the former Giants and Eagles punter, and he does a lot. He runs a kicking workshop, and I've actually sent a couple of kids to him that asked me for a reference. But Sean said to me, if they had this, and it's funny because he used a great word for kickers. He said if they had this Megillah craziness, when I was playing, because now they pay punters all kinds of exorbitant money like he's a quarterback. He says, I never made that money. My last contract I did okay. But he said, I don't make the money that these guys are making now. And, he said, that's just the way it is. It's the time, the year that I played the game.
Absolutely, but I do like to see, common sense way out whenever possible, and I do think that we're at least closer to that with these rookie contracts than we were before. Anyways, but so that's done, and that's one less thing that Cleveland fans have to worry about. Johnny Football is under contract, and there you go. But you know what? Speaking of him, I did want to bring up, before we get into some of this other stuff here, I thought it was, yesterday, Dan Wismar and I talked about it, and I know you and I have talked about it too. The whole with Manziel and Hoyer and the quarterback thing, and we're not going to do the quarterback discussion per se, but I just wanted to mention with Paul Kruger doing some interviews yesterday. I think it was out in Salt Lake City, but we keep mentioning how fans look at it from the perspective of fans and popularity and what the fan base thinks. But the biggest part of the discussion to me when it comes to him is how things affect the rest of the locker room, because that's the real deal. Those are the guys that are playing with you, those are the guys, truly, it doesn't matter if Joe Blow in the media or Jerry over at the Sports Fix or whatever, what they think, opinions are everybody's got one. But at the end of the day, it matters a hell of a lot more what the offensive line that's protecting you thinks and what the players that are sitting next to you in the locker room thinks than anything else. And I just thought yesterday, seeing Paul Kruger, and again, it was nothing inflammatory, it was nothing against anybody, but he spoke to the defense of Brian Hoyer and how he thinks it's ridiculous that there's even a discussion about who starts as the quarterback here this season, because he spoke like a lot of the players. He said, hey man, we're behind Brian. He came in, he had us rocking and rolling, and unfortunately he got hurt, and we're ready to see what he can do as our quarterback this year. And I just thought, man, that rings exactly to what we've been talking about on the show about how forget what the fans and the media think. think about it from the aspect of what's happening in that locker room. And I thought that was the perfect statement to sum up the way a lot of those players feel. And it doesn't change the way it's going to end up and the path that you get there. But it showed that is important for people to say, oh, other players' feelings don't matter. Then I say you know nothing about an actual locker room. You know about fantasy sports. You know about looking at stats on paper, but you've clearly never physically been in any kind of an actual locker room atmosphere, or you would not say that locker room chemistry is not important, because it's the most important thing, more than talent on a team.
Exactly. And although I've never been in an NFL locker room except to do interviews post-game, I have been associated with high school and college teams, and I can tell you one thing about even Division I AA and Division II college, which is where I spent my time as a graduate and postgraduate coaching assistant. Everybody has got to be behind the quarterback, and the quarterback's got to be behind, in line and in step with what the coaching staff wants. The players know who the leader is on the team. There's always an offensive leader. It's always the quarterback. There's a special teams leader who's some scrappy guy who only gets on the field 10 or 12 plays a game and who makes the most of it. And then you have a defensive leader, usually a linebacker or a defensive lineman, who gathers the defense around and tells them, listen, this is how it is. This is going to be how it is as long as I'm here. And that's really what Hoyer has done. He's come in, he's taken command, he's taken the position, he's taken the command of the offense, and he said, this is my offense until the coach and the GM tell me otherwise.
Absolutely, and again, it's going to play itself out during training camp, and we all know that. And I get a kick out of it too, because as I said, I've watched, and I think you've seen too, I've mentioned this before, I have watched I'm not going to say eyes opening. I'm not trying to make it sound like, because I don't. Brian Hoyer is not junior Tom Brady, and I'm not saying that. And I think that's unfair to anybody to try to hymn them with any kind of a description like that. But you have to have seen it on your end, all the way across the country, the toning down of the narrative on most sites anyway, and most reporting places nationally, when they actually got into camp and got a look at Brian Hoyer and John Manziel and how they were against each other, just where they were at in their careers. But the best part is, even after that, there's some people, and I have these little back and forths on Facebook all the time on our social media, and some of the hardcore Johnny football guys will say, well, Hoyer should be ahead because he's played in this offense. And I stop you and say, no, he hasn't. Actually, they are both learning the exact same. Now, he has played in the league, but they're both learning a new offense. So let's not act like Hoyer had the playbook advantage. Now he has the experience advantage, but they're both learning this offense at exactly the same rates and the same pace. Maybe Hoyer had the playbook for 6 weeks before Manziel just because he got it before they drafted him. But I have noticed, and I think it shows respect to Brian Hoyer as just a good quarterback, the national media going, hey, you know what? We really didn't know much about this guy, but he's really looking good, like more than we've seen. I think it's the difference of seeing somebody with your own eyes and not. And so I noticed that while a lot of people continue to obviously know that the end result is going to be Johnny Football getting a shot to run this team, I thought it was a compliment to his recovery from the ACL that he backed a lot of the national media off. And by he, I mean Brian Hoyer.
Yeah, and you know what? I think it's not a bad thing. I think it's a good thing. I think it's important that the players get around the quarterback, and they let the number two guy know, hey, we know you're going to be the eventual guy, but right now the guy ahead of you is the guy. And there's a reason for that, because he has the experience. He may not know the playbook, and neither of them know the playbook. They're both learning it as they go. But, hey, he's the guy who had the experience. He's the guy who did well last year until his injury. Until he does something to lose the job is his to lose. And that's the way it should be. Now, before everybody jumps Ron in the Twitter, on the Twitter account, or hacks you up in the Facebook room, Jerry. This is the way it's been in the NFL for as long as I can remember. I'm a little bit older than you. I started going to games in the 1960s. This is how it was always explained to me. I really, really began to study the game in the early 70s. I remember seeing Franco Harris play his first rookie game in Yankee Stadium for the Steelers, an expedition game before the Giants left Yankee Stadium for the original remodeling. And I can tell you, and having spoken with Franco more recently and done some stuff with him, and I know, again, this is a Cleveland station, but just talking about veterans in the league who have had an impact. Going back to when we spoke to Jim Brown and Reggie Rucker a couple of years ago, where you were with me, Jerry. We see the same thing from the veteran players that we're seeing now. That's one thing that hasn't changed, and I think it's for the betterment of the league that, people still get around, and gather around that starting quarterback and give him that, pat on the back that he needs, that he's in charge of the team.
For sure. You're listening to the Sports Fix. We're talking to Dr. Football, my man here, talking a little bit about the Browns. And, you know what? I want to segue off of that. We're talking about football. And, of course, earlier I talked about Tony Gwynn. When I got back yesterday, I said, they say these things happen in threes. And three greats in their various fields across the last couple of days, over the weekend. Casey Kasem, Tony Gwynn and Chuck Nolls all passed away. Chuck Nolls, of course, with his roots coming back here in Northeast Ohio with Benedictine, and you look at, of course, being on the other side of the rivalry, of course, for all those generations there with the Browns and the Steelers. But Chuck Nolls, the architect of a lot of the success of what the Steelers did, and plus, he started that, which we look at now, especially here in Cleveland with all the coaches. What do we always point to in Cleveland? We look at Pittsburgh, and any franchise with instability, you point back to Pittsburgh and you go, man, they've had as many head coaches in their franchise history as we've had in 3 weeks, and you joke about it, but it's true when you look, and it's, Chuck Nolls, obviously a big part of that, forming the base, and it's so hard for me to wax nostalgic about Steelers people, but you've got to give credit where it's due. And Chuck Nolls, all I'm going to say is just remember, he learned it here before he took it there. But anyways, to see a guy like that pass on, so respected in the game, and talk to me a little bit about Chuck Nolls.
Well, I only got to meet Coach Nolls once. He spoke at an American Football Coaches Association gathering, a lunch and a workshop that was followed by a dinner. And, he took the time to go to every table. When I was a young coach at the time, man, I was, making a transition from coaching high school to coaching Division II college while I was getting a doctorate degree. And, he made sure he came over to every table and spoke to everybody in the room before he left that night. He probably stayed 90 minutes longer than he should have. Before he got back to his hotel, and he was very, very gracious, and he sat and he talked with me for a couple of minutes, and I was there because of Bill Kenny, the great Penn State coach, tight end and tackles coach, having to know him a little bit and gone to a couple of his coaching workshops. So, of course, Coach Kenny introduced me to Coach Nolls, and, I just said, man, I said, if there was any one coach I get to sit down and talk to, I said, I'd love to pick your brain for a couple of hours. And, back then email wasn't a big thing. And, he said, well, here's my regular address and here's my email address. Write me a letter and, we'll sit down and we'll talk about it. And he was very, very gracious. He read for my, doctoral degree on coaches using technology, and gave me some tips on that. And, he was always a very, what I remember him to be, he was always a good man, and he always cared about his players. And, he did some things for players that he didn't have to do as a coach, but he did them as a human being.
Absolutely, and known for, his off-the-field demeanor, and on the field, too, known for being a stickler for fundamentals and reteaching guys. If they came on the team, he would reteach guys the basics, and even as down to the, whether you're talking tackling form and three-point stances and that. And, of course, Chuck Nolls, by the way, continues in the tradition of people that start in Cleveland, leave Cleveland, then come back and kick Cleveland's ass. I mean, not just with Pittsburgh. He initially actually did it when he went into his first coaching gig with the Colts, and then they came in and won an NFL title by beating the Browns, and then went to the Steelers and built what they went on to build there, and the steel curtain and all of that. 22 years. I mean, really, we talked the last couple of days, you talk about Coach Popovich and all of that with San Antonio and how long he's had that run there, even longer here. 22 years, unheard of in today's win now, be gone tomorrow world. 22 years. And as I said, that kind of set the stage for the consistency of the Pittsburgh Steelers head coaching position from that point on.
And, it's funny you bring that up because, the Steelers don't hire coaches for the short term and, let's get a guy in for 4 or 5 years to fix things and then we'll move on to the next big thing. Okay, after Noll, they had Cowher for 15 years, and now how long has Tomlin been there? Close to a decade, if not more than a decade.
Yeah.
So they don't hire coaches for 4 or 5 years. They hire coaches. It's a career. You're making a career out of it. And it's funny. I interviewed Tony Dungy for his first book when he first got out of the league, and we had more of a conversation off air, off recording, as is usually the case with me and my big mouth. And I saw him relate a story that he related to me, doing the routine, for his book. And he said, I was 29 years old and I was a defensive assistant. I really wanted, the defensive coordinator job, and he knew that. Coach Noll knew that. So they were out to dinner. They were at the combine, happened to be in New Orleans that year, or some workout was in New Orleans, and they decided to go and walk around, the quarter and listen to some jazz and eat some food. And they didn't talk once about football for 5 hours. And he didn't know whether or not he had the job or not. And he got home and his wife told him, "Do you have the job?" And he said, "I'm not sure." So the next time they were together, about a day or two later, he said, "Coach, did I get the job?" He says, "Of course you got the job." I said, "Yeah, I did it, didn't I?"
Good story, my man. And I'm sure that there's people all over there. I mean, I've talked to some off the air. See, this is, where I rely on guys like you who have actually had the chance to interact with the, some of the guys from the previous generation. And I've got a whole list of guys that I go, man, I wish I had the chance to just sit and talk and pick that guy's brain, because I'm big on that. I love talking to guys, and that's why Chuck Nolls falls in the category of people who ended up, not that there's, any way that you go is bad, but I hate to see people that had long, powerful memories, things they were involved in, stories to tell when Alzheimer's affects them, because it's like it erases that. And you know what I mean? Because I'm big, I love it. As a pro wrestler, I do it with anybody who will give me the time to sit in the car or sit down and hang out for a couple of hours and just shut up and let them talk. And one of the best things I learned was when you are around somebody, it does not matter what they, whatever the genre or the field is, when you're around somebody that has done things that are like this and at that level and done more than you and learned more than you sit down, you shut your mouth, and you just try to convince them to keep talking as long as you possibly can. And he's definitely a guy I would have loved to have had the opportunity there. And again, as I say, he might have had his success in Pittsburgh, but it all started here in Cleveland. Damn it, and that's I'm sticking to that. But what's amazing too?
And I'll leave you one last thing about Noll, where there's a similarity. My last conversation with Tom Coughlin before I came out here, when I left the Giants beat and came out here to Arizona, I asked him, I said, "Coach, in all your years of coaching, who is the one guy that taught you the most about the job?" And, you think he's going to say his high school coach, or he's going to say his college coach at Syracuse. He said it was working for Bill Parcells the first time as a wide receivers coach. He said, "And everything I learned from Bill, I took to the Jacksonville Jaguars, and I took to the Boston College job. And I knew someday I would come back to the NFL and be a head coach because Bill told me it would be so." And sure enough.
Man, you know what's nuts too? Unless I'm wrong, he did win the Coach of the Year, but it wasn't until the end of his career all of the accolades and championships and everything else, it wasn't until I think the second or third final year of his career that he won the NFL Coach of the Year award too. So just amazing to see that, man. But and definitely
vastly underrated. Underrated as a coach, Jerry. I mean, people respect him now after the fact for what he did, but when he was doing it, he took a lot of heat, for putting Joe Gilliam in there until Bradshaw was ready. He took a lot of heat for having Swan as a starting receiver, and it wasn't racial heat. It was just, he's too small. He has to jump really high. And that's what it is. He didn't care what other people thought.
Now, what I just remember, obviously the 80s, I was a child growing up in that era with the Browns and everything, and I do remember when I was just in my, 10, 11, 12-year-old kind of years, remember that being the tail end of Chuck Nolls' career, and like what you said, how there was a lot of not critique, but a lot of he's finally going to retire, because I think he had some not bad seasons. They have 500 seasons his last couple of years, 9-7, 7-9, whatever. But I just remember that was kind of the conversation, being a division team there in Pittsburgh and all of that was, will he go, and then finally, they made the move, and of course he gets replaced with the other guy who should have been the next coach of the Cleveland Browns. That's a conversation for another day, Coach Cowher there, but and he started that. I thought it was interesting when I saw there were 14. He was the 14th head coach of the Steelers when he was hired, and there's only been 3 since, him and 2 others. You know what I mean? That really created the stability there in that organization. And
that's what Cleveland should be striving for, and I believe they are with this current owner. I may not agree with the way he goes about it all the time, but it's not my team.
Let's wait more than 6 months before we start talking about stability with these guys. I agree with you, though. I would sure love 5 years from now to still be talking about coach and using the word Coach Pettin, but we'll have to see. Let's get through one first, because 6 months ago, I don't think we thought Coach Chud was going to be a term that we no longer used anymore either. But you're right. And not just the Browns. Every team should strive. I always point to the Steelers for that. And, even when I get into it with Steelers fans, I despise making anything Pittsburgh sound good, but I say, hey, man, as far as a franchise, you build like they do. Stability. You build your own. You don't sign other people's free agents. You draft right. You do all of that. So, and the coaching is the key. Having the same guy every year, because when he doesn't worry about his job, he doesn't make silly, short-sighted decisions because he has to try to win tomorrow. When he knows that he's going to be there, no matter what decisions he makes, he can make the best decisions for the team. So that all comes with that too. And Chuck Nolls will definitely be missed. He had a long and storied career and did a lot for the game, sure. The other thing, hey, I wanted to switch off that before I let you go, Dr. Football here, and ask you where you were 20 years ago today. Where were you?
Oh, wow.
Where I was.
Where was I 20 years ago today? And it's funny you bring that up, because people have been asking me about this, all week, all this week leading up to, yesterday and today. And I was sitting at home watching Game 6 of the NBA Finals, because my New York Knicks were playing, and all of a sudden they break away from the game, and they break away from John Starks taking a three-pointer, and I'm watching a white Bronco go down the Hollywood freeway, and I'm like, what the heck is going on? And they're like, O.J. Simpson's got a gun, and he's driving a white Bronco on the highway, and I'm like, oh boy, this is what I got to miss, the Knicks possibly winning a championship for, O.J. Simpson being chased by the police.
Oh, I'll tell you, I remember. And you know what? I've seen I don't know if you've seen it, the documentary they did on 30 for 30. What was it? It was called October 17th, June 17th, 1994. And it was about what you say. It was all those things that came together on the same day. And you had the Knicks series. That was the Knicks and the Rockets, right? That playoff series, the final series that they had.
And I was
World
and
Cup.
I was transitioning. I was on my way from one job, from my teaching job, to my second job, which at the time was writing for the good old Bronx Press Review in the Bronx, New York City. And I was sitting there because the only way I could, cover the game was to watch the game at home at that time. I didn't have credentials for the Knicks. I did have them for the Rangers, and Madison Square Garden
and they
knew
were
who I
playing
was,
at the same
I
time,
wasn't getting
too.
in for the Knicks.
But they were playing at the same time, too, because New York had the Knicks and the Rangers in their respective finals at the same time.
Right. And I had been, just a couple of days before, I'd been in MSG for a Ranger playoff game, and I said, gee, this would be really great for the city, because the Jets and the Giants were both doing poorly, and, the Yankees and the Mets were nowhere to be found. The Knicks and the Rangers could do good playing in the same building in the same season and, both be headed for championships. And here I am, watching that game and making my notes on my little yellow legal pad for my story that week and on the Knicks. And sure enough, I'm watching a white Bronco go up and down the highway.
I just remember being in another room, making a sandwich or something, and hearing on the news, and then coming in and seeing this, like you said, that shot that we've all seen of the white Ford Bronco on the highway, and then, talking about the note that he left behind, and there was conjecture. Was OJ on the run? Was he going to commit suicide? Was he, what was good? There was talk that they were going to drive him to a cemetery and he was going to, blow himself away and for the guilt of the crime that he did not commit and all of that stuff. But when I talked about it at the beginning of the show, looking past the OJ, the crime itself, but because of the different time that we were in, we were on the cusp of the internet age and all of that, but it wasn't there yet. And I just think back, that was the first, and it's totally different now because we're numb to it. I mean, Aaron Hernandez's story pops up in the news. Nobody even bats an eye at it anymore. But, think back, OJ was like one of the big, I don't want to say first because I know there were others, but one of the first big, wow, this is a revered, everyone knows him, mainstream type athlete involved in this horrendous crime that he's accused of. And I thought, man, I mean, really, I don't want to say groundbreaking, like it broke ground for other people to go out and murder people, but you didn't have a lot. That was really unique for its time. And we've become numb to stories like OJ now, but I just remember how fascinating it was at the time and just thinking back to it. Are you there, Bill?
I'm here. I'm right here.
Oh, there we go. I mean, so, do you agree? That was kind of the beginning of this era of the beginning, but it was the first big where things came together with the media. I know CNN was starting to reach its peak and be able to flaunt its powers, and it became such a big deal. But it was really one of the early cases like that featured the right person, the right crime, and the right media publicity.
And he's never been the same. And he never will be the same. And I guess it's taken him a long time to realize that. What he did, what he did changed the course not only of history but of his life.
I mean, they got him, dude. I mean, at the end of the day, they got him back. They got the crime. They may not have got the right crime, but they were able to give him the time that he should have had to begin with. Which that whole second story is ridiculous enough as it is when he goes and tries to steal his stuff back and gets himself thrown in jail for real this time. But, even the people, and this is why it trips me out today, even the people that held staunchly with OJ at the time and after the case, and hey, he was found not guilty. Some people, that is the Bible, and they say, hey, he was found not guilty. But when OJ started getting too cute for his own good, after the case was over, after the civil suit was over, when he started flaunting first with all the I'm going to find the real killer thing, then he never found a golf course where somebody didn't track him down and he didn't have a ridiculous statement to make. And then he, in my opinion, he added more fuel to the fire with that book that did not happen, that was going to be made a TV special. I didn't do it, but if I did, here's how it would have happened. And I thought at that point, you basically asked the government to find the first opportunity they could to try to make up for the screw-up in that trial, because at that point you were blatantly thumbing your nose at the world and saying, damn right I did it, and I got away with it. Do you remember that? When Fox was going to pay him for that? Thing. Do you remember that, Bill? When Fox was going to pay him to write that book, I didn't do it, but if I did, here's how I would have done it play-by-play.
Yeah, and, I just thought that was absurd, when I first heard that he was actually going to do a book and that they were doing a book with the idea of making it into a TV movie. Yeah. I was like, what else? I did the now well-known proverbial facepalm when I heard that.
At that point, even to me, the staunchest OJ supporter had to go, I think I may have been wrong about this one, but just curious, since we're talking about it, do you think, guilty or not guilty, I don't care what the result was, do you think OJ did it?
I don't think he did it, but I think he knows more. I don't think he did it, but I think he knows more than he let on, and he knows who did it. I've always believed that it was the oldest son that was involved, and that's why the DNA was so close.
And you know what? That's a good point, and I think that the son was involved, but I think OJ did, and I'll tell you why. I'm one of those guys that gets fascinated in court cases. I love to research, and I've looked. OJ's one, because it's famous. I've looked at a lot of that. Rewatched the trial stuff over the years, and I got to tell you, I'm with you. I know he had help, but it was so personal. The actual crime, the actual violence was so beyond a level of just a detached murder that it had to be juice, man. It was too personal for it not to be, man. I mean, he practically decapitated them. I mean, it was, man. And that's the thing. But you got, and then when the whole the cut on when he flies across the country, and then all of that. I think OJ was there, and I think he was involved. But I think you're right. A lot of people looked at the Cato and thought that he may have been the other guy. But I think you may be on something there too as well. But I think there's no doubt in my mind that the main architect of it was OJ, but I do think he had help to pull it off and get back home as quickly as he did, and in the limited window that he had. But man, there's no way OJ is not personally the one that went to work there. I mean, otherwise, you got to be you got to be sadistic to do it anyway. But when you don't have a personal, a personal hatred or anger involved in that, like, you don't go as far as that went, That's just my take on it, man. I think OJ had... Either way, he's doing the time for a different crime, but they got him. They said, man, because they could have gave him a low sentence on the attempted robbery deal, but they hit him with the max because they said, we screwed up once, man, and we're not letting you go, Juice. Did you see Where Are They Now? It's on the internet. We had it on our Facebook or something of OJ Now. I mean, trust me, he is paid the price. For anybody that thought that he got away with murder, life's catching up to the Juice now. Just rest assured about that one.
It's really funny. I was working at a high school in Harlem, in East Harlem at the time, as my day job, and I was coaching in the Bronx for my after-school job. And I remember everybody I worked with in both teaching jobs were asking me, because they knew I was also a football writer, did he do this? And I said, I don't know, man. There's not enough evidence to prove that he actually committed it. Was he there? Did he do it? I think he was right there with the person who did do it. I never thought Cato Kalin was involved. I worked with a lot of people who said, well, nobody's blaming the white guy. The white guy did it, this and that. And I said, you guys, because you're clouding, you're letting your judgment, your opinion of the person cloud and crowd your judgment. And you need to look at the facts. And like you said, you like court cases. My dad was a law enforcement officer, federal agent. My uncle was a New York City cop. I had originally gone to college for criminal justice before going to the Army. So I understood, and I looked at a lot of these cases, to write papers on them for school. I never looked at this case because it happened after I got out of criminal justice school and I was on to a different part of my life. But I figured if I had gone back and I had been involved in criminal justice school at that time and been handed that case to write up, I would have pulled out the rest of my hair and been bald prematurely.
Man, it is funny to think. I don't know what's most amazing to me is any of that or the fact that it's been 20 years since that all happened, man. Since, it was the day before. It was the 16th that they put the charges against him, and then it was the 17th that he took off, and
right.
I'll never forget. You just reminded me as we wrap that up, thinking about it. I remember, and it was on that 30 for 30 when they were showing the live video. I remember the first couple of reports that came out that said 2 people were going to be arrested for the crimes, that they had evidence against OJ and a second person, and then a few hours later they did the whole we had bad information and they've decided there is no second person. But interesting that we're sitting here both saying we know, everybody knows, but at the time the police knew too. But maybe that was their mistake. Maybe they got starstruck and focused on the big fish instead of trying to catch the smaller one and convince him to giving you the bigger one, because I don't know. But it's just funny because all the initial stories that 2 people were going to be arrested, and then it turned out to only be 1. Man, 20 years. Where did it go? Where did it go, Dr. Football?
You know what? And Johnny Cochran and Robert Kardashian made their careers on that case.
Yeah. They sure did. And I'll tell you what, for people that say karma happens for people involved in bad things, you believe OJ did it, you can look at a lot of his dream team, and you can look at OJ, and you can look at a lot of those people. Their lives did not go in a good direction after that case. So perhaps it was the revenge of Nicole and Ron Goldman going, I don't know, maybe because nobody turned out better for that one except a couple of people made a whole lot of money. Other than that, man, it didn't work out well for a whole lot of people. I think the prosecutors, bad things happened to them in their lives too. Marsha Clark, I think, and whoever the other one was. But anyways, talk about some lawyers that butchered a court case. There you go. That I do remember from 20 years ago. I know that thing turned into the biggest fraud of a trial ever because it was all about. It was a Hollywood trial is what it was, man. It was one of the early Hollywood trials, in my opinion. And so, whatever. But, man, that was 20 years ago, brother. 20 years ago today. And here we sit doing the Sports Fix and Dr. Football. That day, 20 years ago, the real Cleveland Browns still existed. We were still 15 months away from Art Modell announcing that he was jacking the Browns out of Cleveland. So that'll show you how long ago it was. We didn't even know what was fixing to happen.
You know what? I had significantly more hair on my head than I do now.
I did too, because I was still 1 year away from shaving my head bald. I still had very long hair, actually, at the time, and not long, but medium length hair. And then I shaved my head bald and became a wrestler not long after that. Dr. Football, my man, what I always love when the conversation just kind of goes wherever, man. Thank you very much, as always. Another great Tuesday talk. You and I get together and talk some football. I love it and look forward to whatever we've got to talk about next week, my man.
You know what? And really quick, I'll just leave you with the last thing. A little something I heard from back east. Some guys have these injuries, and it's not the team that holds back the information. Sometimes it's the guy personally, and the guy tells the doctors, "Hey, don't tell everybody it's as bad as it is. I know you're going to tell the team, but I don't want it getting out to the papers." And put 2 and 2 together and come up with 4 on that one. And if you don't have it, email me later in the week, and I'll let you know who I'm talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. Hit me up and let me know what you're talking about, my man. Dr. Football, always a great time. And you guys can talk to him on Twitter at AskDrFootball. Bill, you have a great week, and we'll catch up next Tuesday.
All right, Jerry, you have a good one. And, hey, it's only 80 days from the start of the NFL season. Mark your calendars, folks.
80 days from today. All right, my man. Dr. Football, you have a good one. We'll catch up next week.
All right, Jerry, be well.
All right. And look, you guys in the chat room can listen. I said that wrong. When I said I had longer hair, I think I should have specified. And this is actually a visual that I shouldn't even be giving you. My hair was long, but it wasn't long in the back. It was long on the top. Like, I actually had, let me just tell you, 1993, 94, 95 was an interesting day for me. I was a teenager, and I tried a lot of different experiments. I think I tried to braid my hair at one point in time. Tried some dreadlocks at that point in time. I tried the high military fade. I was all over the place before I said, you know what? I was born to be bald and beautiful, baby. And I'll never forget the day that I just shaved it off. There it goes. And it's crazy, actually, since you guys got me talking about it. It's crazy to think back at how many people for the first year or two afterwards said, why did you do that? I'll never forget my mom, my grandmother, and my dad, all of them. Jerry, you had such a beautiful head of hair. Why would you do that? And, of course, you know, I got the 20 years from now, you are so going to regret that. You're going to wish you had hair. And I'm like, you're thinking back now, you're nuts. That's one regret I don't have. I regret a lot of things that I've done. Being bald is not one of them, because I am bald and beautiful, if I don't mind saying so myself. No, it's a lot less work in the morning, and you know, I can do my hair. It takes me a matter of minutes to do. Did I say minutes? I meant seconds to do this thing up. That's the beauty of it. I roll out of bed, baby. I'm ready to go for the day. But yeah, I did have hair back then. Back then, when OJ was innocent, I still had hair. Man, how life has changed in 20 years. Hey, guys, we're going to take a break. When we come back, got another segment to go, wrapping things up here on the Sports Fix.
Warning. Listening to the Sports Fix could cause serious injury, bodily harm, or even death.
Ah, broken blood vessel!
You've been warned. The Sports Fix.
Hey guys, before we go to the break, I want to talk to you a little bit again about our good friends at Harry Buffalo North Olmsted. Of course, you know during Brown season, we're there each and every week. What a fun time it was last year. But not just that, so many more reasons for you to check out the Harry Buffalo today. The UFC, the Ultimate Fighting Championships, some of the hottest fights in the world today. Each and every one of their huge events. Harry Buffalo is one of the few places in Northeast Ohio you can go there and watch each and every UFC fight at the Harry Buffalo. And let me tell you, I've been there. The people are out the door. They are to the rafters. It is one of the craziest environments for some UFC fights. Wing Mondays, they've got great deals on wings and drinks, and every day of the week there's a different special, a different deal. And don't forget the Bison Burger, the unbelievable. It is the combination of a fantastic burger and eating healthy combined into one unbelievable sandwich. You have got to get a Bison Burger while you're there. So whatever you're looking for, whatever day of the week, Monday through Friday, Saturday, Sundays, there's something for you at the Harry Buffalo North Olmsted, just outside Great Northern Mall. Check them out today. Harry Buffalo, join the herd.
Hey, this is Antoine Jameson, and you listen to the Sports Fix.
Whether it's an oil change or a new set of tires, Quick Lane at Valley Ford Truck has you covered for your car care needs. They're your neighborhood quick service experts. They also offer a low price tire guarantee. Choose from 13 brands, and if you find the same tires at a lower price within 30 days, Quick Lane at Valley Ford will refund the difference. 5715 Canal Road, right under the 480 bridge in Valley View. Come see why life is better in the Quick Lane. quicklane.com/Valley Ford Truck.
The Sports Fix is now available every day on the world's largest internet radio service, iHeartRadio. Download the free iHeartRadio app, subscribe to the show, and get your fix. No football? No problem at Harry Buffalo North Olmsted. The excitement never stops. Every day of the week brings a different set of food and amazing drink specials.
And now,
fans, Harry Buffalo North Olmsted is the home for every UFC pay-per-view live on the big screens.
Let's get it all!
And let's not forget their mouth-watering trademark, the Bison Burger.
They sure are good.
Nobody does bison like Harry Buffalo. The perfect combination of healthy and delicious.
Hey there, eat up, y'all. You this good church-going folk. Y'all deserve a little treat.
What are you waiting for? Get to Harry Buffalo, just outside Great Northern Mall today. Harry Buffalo. Join the herd.
Hi, this is Dean Chenoth, head coach of Cleveland's Lake Erie Monsters, and you're listening to the Sports Fix.
Welcome back to the Sports Fix as we head into the final segment of the day, wrapping things up here. J-Rocc back with you. That's right, had them looks to kill 20 years ago. Motley Crue, baby, bringing us back into the show as messing around with my man Charles in the chat room. He insisted I had a mullet. I'm like, brother, if there's one place the hair I did not grow, it was not the back. I basically just shaved everything tight and kept letting the top grow as long as possible because I was 100% positive I was going to be, Road Dogg ended up having the hairstyle that I was aiming for, the pro wrestler back in the 90s and early 2000s. I was shooting for the long braids coming down top. Listen, man, I was representing the West Side, baby. I was a young, handsome gangster type back then, or at least I thought. Man, I look back at pictures and how ridiculous I looked back then. Man, let me just tell you, good thing that you're allowed to look ridiculous when you're 16, 17, 18, somewhere in that area. I actually did get I think I was 19 when I shaved. No, I was 18 when I shaved my head. Because I shaved it a few months before I became a wrestler, and then bam, the rest was history. And so, anyways, welcome back into the show where Lord knows what we end up talking about here, but it's what we do every day, and I think we have a good time doing it. Welcome back in, you guys. Hey, I wanted to talk just a couple of throwbacks from yesterday. I got a lot of feedback talking about, and you know what? A lot of people, good and bad, but a lot of people kind of feeling what I was feeling yesterday, talking about the Cavaliers coaching search and David Blatt and him, and not just my feeling that I think that he's quickly growing on the Cavs a lot, and I think that a lot of it is looking back at what we were talking about, looking at the makeup of the San Antonio Spurs. And you know what, Terry Pluto, he did a good write-up in the Plain Dealer. I'm not sure if it was in today's or yesterday's. I read them both at the same time, but he did a good write-up just kind of about the Spurs and the type of team, where they all come from and how that team is put together and the international flavor that's all around it. So, he did a very good job looking at that, and I'm looking at it, and he continues to talk. When you look at the difference, I know the numbers don't stop, but Della Vadova that he made, one of the things he pointed out in his article was the difference in, I know it sounds like, oh, well, it's not 30 and 38 when he played, 3 and 11 in the games that he didn't. He really did turn into a nice little piece for that team. And I love Delly, man. I really hope that they continue to allow him to grow. And that's the thing. You know what? That's something that I hope that this new regime does. And whether it's David Blatt or whoever it is get rid of that mindset that so many pundits, media, and fans have. I see it on Twitter. I see it on Facebook. I see it in the media. I hear it. It's that it's that limited window. It's like when you look at guys and you have an idea of what makes a good player or a star player or a great player. And if they don't fit in that ideal, then you cast them aside. And I think that is what bad organizations do all the time. And that's why you talk about a place like any place that's, whether you're talking about the Patriots, whether you're talking about the Spurs, any of these teams that are known for finding people, developing guys, where the word on them is that they find the guys that nobody else knew. That's not it. It's that so many people do it. And how many times have you been, or maybe you've done it? I have done it. I try to not do it, but I can admit that I've done it. How many times have you talked to somebody about somebody, and the minute a guy's name gets brought up, man, that guy sucks. Man, that guy stinks. Man, that guy, you know what I mean? An instant write-off. And I think a guy like Deli is exactly what I'm describing right now. Do you know how many people argued with me that Matt Dellavedova should not have had a spot on the Cavaliers roster and that he doesn't even belong in the NBA except on the, maybe he can make the 12th man on the worst team. And I'm like, I'm sorry. What do you? And I'll go there because I said this to some people. I said, why? Because he's white? Because he's short? Because he doesn't fit your style of what a player should be or a star NBA player should be? So you wrote him off. And I think so many people do that like that at the snap of a finger. Look past a guy. And Deli is the perfect example. And I'm not sitting here trying to act like Matt Dellavedova is a 20-point, 20-rebound guy. He doesn't need to be. But I can tell you, and I said this, as a matter of fact, probably back as early as November or December last year, you guys heard me say over and over, whenever I would praise Dellavedova, I would say, for those of you guys that don't like him, I guarantee you the Miami Heat, the San Antonio Spurs, those teams that are at the top of their divisions that are heading towards the playoff, guarantee you there's a spot for him on those teams. I guarantee you they would take a guy like that right now. And you look at the Spurs. I look at Deli and I go, man, that's the kind of guy that would fit right into that style. But I think that the Cavs have to get themselves, and that's why I'm not afraid if they go outside the box with this coaching search, just as long as they don't go in the wrong way. Because when I said it yesterday, I think I liked the phrasing. It's that it's not just high risk, high reward, but it's a defining hire. Because if you're right and the guy is the right guy, then it works. But if you're wrong, it's over for you and it's over for him if you're David Griffin. So, but man, I think you got to get outside that box. You got to get outside of the same old with these guys. And you know what? Look at Mike Brown. He recognized what he had in Dellavedova, and he was not afraid to put him out there over players that made more money, had a bigger name, had a bigger pedigree, but Dellavedova made a bigger impact on the game. So that, for those of you that wanted Mike Brown gone, that should show you something there. He had that mentality, and I'm telling you, I still think had Mike Brown stayed in place that this Cavaliers team would have been just fine moving forward with him. But what's done is done, and we can't go back in that conversation. But I'm not one that said that Mike Brown had to go. And again, his recognition of a guy like Deli goes a long way to showing me that he looks outside that box. But it's whatever. The next guy has to do that. We can no longer have guys that look past a guy. And I'll say this. Mike Brown learned from his previous mistake because Mike Brown made, as we saw, and he's not the only one. He and San Antonio cut loose Danny Green. San Antonio cut him loose twice. Then they found a role for him. They found a way to keep developing him, and they found a role for him, and look what he turned into there. Because so many people go, oh, Mike Brown cut Danny Green so that he could keep Sasha Pavlovic on the roster or whatever, but San Antonio cut him twice too, so let's just not be unfair about the conversation. But it's recognizing those guys. And just, I'm looking at look at this team, Patty Mills, and that coming from Australia, kind of playing in the same mode as Deli D. But look at a guy like Bellinelli or Patty Mills or Splitter. I wonder how many of these guys would have slipped through the cracks with the previous Cavaliers front office, because sometimes when a team spends all day looking for the next LeBron, they miss the next guy that's actually gonna be a big piece of what you've got going forward. And the thing I say about the Spurs is go ask anybody that's not a hardcore, because if you're a hardcore NBA fan, you can go deep on the roster of the Spurs, but go to the casual fans and ask them how deep they can name the San Antonio Spurs roster. And there's a reason for that, because it's a bunch of guys that fit the style and play the game. That's what I want the Cavs to do. So that's why I'm hoping that if Blatt's your guy, that he's outside the box enough that he can do that. And I would have come on. Obviously it's easy to say I'd have no problem getting the results that the San Antonio Spurs get, but I would have no problem if the Cleveland Cavaliers roster was made up the way the Spurs is, by different players, divergent background. And I think that comes together as players too, when you can get divergent player styles to come together. There's a difference in how they play the game in Russia, in Israel, in Europe, in the United States, in Australia. And when you blend that, you can't copy the Spurs, though. You can't just go out and get 12 guys from 12 different countries and say that we're going to create our own international powerhouse here. It's got to be the right guys with the right skill sets and put in the right places. But again, it's all about looking outside the box, getting the hell out of that same old mindset, retreads and recycled players. And, you know, I know you'll say, well, yeah, how can you say retreads and you like Mike Brown coming back? I get you there. But I'm saying I don't think Mike Brown should have been let go to begin with. But that's a different argument. But the retread coaches and all of that, let's look for something new, something outside the box. And I think for once, it maybe, just maybe, I doubt it, because every team wants the shortcut to victory. The shortcut to victory is trying to put together a team the way Miami was assembled, which was identify stars, try to bring them in, put them together, and have enough money left on the rest of the roster to pay just enough decent backups to try to win something built around your guys. I hope Cavaliers and other teams, but especially the Cavaliers, try to build their team in the vein of the San Antonio Spurs. And it's easier said than done, but I'm telling you, that to me, that's the path of sustained success. Otherwise, you get what all of these other teams in the NBA are dealing with, which is a window where even when they build it up, look at the Boston Celtics when they made their run. They made their trades. They got their big three. They put Allen and they put Garnett and they put them together with Paul Pierce, and they traded out and they spent a ton of money and they built a franchise that won them a couple of championships. But when that run was over, they had to tear it apart, and look at where the Celtics are now, starting all over again because they went all in and they went in that direction. I don't recall a time in the last 15 years that the San Antonio Spurs have ever started all over again. They've had to retool, they've had to add pieces, and they've had streaks where they've gone 3 or 4 years in a row making the playoffs and losing at various stages in the playoffs. Most other cities, including Cleveland, the head coach wouldn't make it through that because it would be like, well, he made it to the finals. And look at the two finals runs ago. The next 3 years, the Spurs lost in the first round, second round, and first round of the playoffs. Most coaches would be gone after that because they'd be like, well, we're regressing. We're not getting further in the playoffs. We got to bring in somebody new to move it further. And what you actually do is undo all the work and all the growth that you've made there. The Spurs have never rebuilt. They've never really reloaded. They've just added pieces. They've kept the core together, and they've just kept doing things the same way. What they did was outsmarted the league. They saw where everybody else was going, and they said, man, this is the only way to counter that, and they are right. And if you don't, it's almost like in baseball. To me, it's in baseball, we say money ball. If you want to beat the Yankees and the Red Sox and the Dodgers, you got to play money ball. You got to play that small money ball where you find the best bang for your buck. Well, you want to win in the NBA, you want to beat the Miami Heat, you got to play Spurs ball. You got to put together a team that 1 through 9, it doesn't matter which combination's on the floor, they give you an opportunity to win and succeed, and they all play well together. Otherwise, you're going to have to play Miami's way. You're going to have to go out and guess what? There's only 1 or 2 teams that can try to stack their team up like that. Everybody else can overspend, which is what the Cavs have done for so long too. Overspend on medium guys and spend way too much money on guys that don't bring you a bang for the buck. And you're still chasing the tail. The dog is just going in a circle. So, and that's why I'm being open-minded when it comes to David Blatt, and I'm being open-minded when it comes to Griffin and the way that hopefully they go about putting this thing together. But I just think I look at the Spurs and I just think, man, how many of these players, I'm telling you, Patty Mills to me is the kind of player that would have been cut in training camp from the Cavaliers, and look at how big Patty Mills came up for the Spurs throughout the season. You know, it's an undrafted guy. For those of you that want to say, man, second-round draft picks are worthless in the NBA. Patty Mills was an undrafted guy. That means to the NBA, he wasn't even good enough to be drafted in the second round of the draft. And I continue. It's just like when guys criticize the Browns. They go, oh, how can you like Terrence West? He came from Towson. He's a small school guy. I'm like, talk to me in 6 months, man. Where you were is not any indication of where you're going. Just like they say, past results hold no consideration towards future success whatsoever. And again, I think people are short-sighted. People look at the picture, they look at the package, and they quickly judge a guy. And I told you, I've been as guilty of it as anybody else, you know. I can't sit here and tell you that when the Cavs cut Danny Green in 2010, I said, man, don't do that. If I was getting paid to evaluate talent, I would hope that I would have done that. But back then they didn't. And again, the Spurs did it too. But just looking here, and Delly is just my example because I fought guys this year about him who there are people who told me point blank, that dude's not good enough to play for any good team in the NBA. He's just good enough to play for the Cavs. And I'm like, you're nuts. I will continue to tell you that right now, the San Antonio Spurs would go, I've got a spot for Matt Dellavedova. Trust me, I've got a spot on this team for him to contribute. So the Cavs have to get outside the box. They have to forget what the hell any other team is doing. Forget trying to go after this star system of the NBA. You have got to identify the right coach and the right pieces of talent and put a team together that nobody sees coming and that has staying power. Put a team together that gives you a window of multiple years of growing and becoming a team, not multiple year window to win a championship. Even the Heat, for all the talk about them, they're about to tear that team apart because they're as maxed out as they can be from trying to do it the way that they did it. Now, I'm sure they will. They'll rebuild it, and they'll do whatever they do there. But everything done that way reaches a peak. You know, the other thing that I noticed, too, I saw this just on a website when I was doing my research this morning, was about the money. That all the talk, and I get this one thrown in my face daily, the Heat. The LeBron and Wade and them took less money so they could build this championship team. They each make almost $20 million apiece. Do you know what Tony Parker makes? Tim Duncan, Manu Ginobili? Tony Parker makes $12 million. Tim Duncan makes $10 million. Manu Ginobili makes $7.5 million. They actually take less so that their team can make more. Look at the difference. That is, those three players make 12, 19, 20, 30.3 million. The big three for San Antonio makes $30 million combined. The big three for Miami makes $58 million combined. Nearly double. There's your difference. But everybody will say how they took less money because they took $1 million less than they could have gotten if they had wanted their max. They took $2 million less. That's why Miami had to kick Mike Miller to the curb. That's why Miami had to go sign Greg Oden and take a shot at this broken down roster that they put together. And what I mean by that is the bench, because the bench players were weak on the Heat. It has nothing to do with who was starting, but they definitely, and we said it, this was the weakest bench that the Heat came into, in my opinion, this season. It's because of the way the contracts were put together. So you talk to me about those unselfish guys in Miami all you want, and look at the difference there. And so anyways, but that's part of it too. There's a difference between phony unselfishness and actual unselfishness. And that's the reason that the Spurs can be 9 deep, like Kendall was talking about the other day. That's the reason that the Spurs can be better than anybody else 1 through 9. Because their leaders are actual leaders. The other team that we're talking about, Miami, their leaders are media leaders. Their leaders are front runners. And they've taught the rest of the team to be that way too. And it's from the top down. You can say whatever you want, but the example of organization is set from the top down. And when those guys are saying, hey, we take less to make the team better, and you look and you go, man, wow, they really do. And then when these other guys are sitting here, you know, it is what it is. So that's all part of putting the team together. So if it starts with the coach, if it starts with going, that's the other thing that Terry Pluto, giving him credit for his article, pointed out, is for everybody that says, I don't want the Cavs to hire a coach that I've never heard of before, or a no-name, or whatever you want to say. Nobody knew who Pop was either. Nobody knew who Greg Popovich was. He was a Division III head coach when Larry Brown brought him on to the Spurs as his assistant coach. Division III head coach. I mean, we're talking small schools. We're talking about, here we are right back with that again. He started 1996 when he took over. The Spurs started 3-15 as well under this guy that nobody had heard of at that time. And then they went to work and they put their team together. And again, you cannot just say we're going to copy greatness here, because there's a reason. And its name is Tim Duncan and Tony Parker. And I think Tony Parker, everybody says Tim Duncan guaranteed Hall of Famer. I don't know if, of course he is, but I don't know if Tony Parker is a Hall of Famer, but he's pretty damn close, because, man, I think he gets underappreciated for some of the skills that he's got, man. The difficulty level of the shots that he makes and his composure out there, definitely, he's one that would be in that discussion too. So you got to have the great players, but you've got to have the outside the box mindset, and you've got to have a front office that doesn't cave. That's the other thing. When the media, you think that in San Antonio, the media wasn't wanting Pop fired, wanting the team to go after free agents, wanting the team to go after this guy when a team wins a title and then the next 3 years can't get out of the second round of the NBA playoffs? Yes, but instead of listening, as happens here, as happens everywhere else, instead of letting the media control them, they stuck to the game plan. And it has to be hard. My gut instinct after 3 years of missing the finals after making it is, are we doing something wrong? But you hold and they were doing something wrong, but it wasn't the players that they had. Pop will tell you it was because they were focused too much on defense and they weren't watching the changes in the league offensively. So they worked on and Pop worked on becoming a better coach, coaching better offense, changing his offensive sets. And they brought in a few different pieces, the complementary pieces to go with it, and they increased their offense. But very hard to do. I get it. When the media is on you every day, man, for 3 years straight, to sit tight and not get rid of aging players as they're being called and not cave. That's the other key, too, because you could have everything right. You can have the right coach. You can have the right prospects. You can have the right star player, everything together. But if you pack it in too quick, or if the pieces get broken up too quickly, you might have never known how good that could have been, because it falls apart. And then you look back and go, damn, if we would have just stuck the course one more year, we were right there. So that's why I hope Griffin is here for a couple of years. I really hope Gilbert didn't make a quick, short-sighted hire and say, well, if he doesn't work out, I'll fire him next year, because that's the BS way to go about it. He has to be in place for a couple of years. He has to be allowed to pick this coach. And again, I'm not 100% sold on Blatt, but I'm starting to think of everybody who's outside the box. I think that he's very intriguing, and even if he's not, I think he is to the Cavs, and I think that he may be the next coach. He comes in tomorrow, and I would not be surprised if he does not just lock that job up. If Dan Gilbert likes what he hears, I could just see him walking out of there as the coach. But yeah, look at that. And again, Terry Pluto, good article today in the Plain Dealer there about that. A lot of good points, and some of them that I brought up here and talked about. So, and the other thing too, just on the way out here as we're talking about it, Chris Bosh, did you guys hear him complaining, whining in the media about how it was so much harder this year than we thought it was going to be, and we didn't have any fun playing basketball this year. It was work all the time. When we won, people expected it, and when we lost, it was such a big deal when we lost. Guess what? What did you think was going to happen when you, specifically you, Mr. Raptor, you, Mr. Dinosaur, you are the one that said not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4. How about my boys at GV Artwork, by the way? If you guys haven't seen, GV Artwork made a shirt spoofing that for the Spurs in the Spurs colors, and it says not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4. 5 championships. Tim Duncan was wearing it the day after the finals, tweeted out a picture of it. Within 24 hours, it got from GV Artwork to Tim Duncan. Pretty cool. But so them guys are just spreading like wildfire with that GV Artwork. Love to have them on board with us. But Chris Bosh was the guy front and center saying that, and now how he's out here whining about how we each, what did I just say? They each made $19 million this year, plus their endorsement money. And they're complaining that they had to work and that their job wasn't fun and that it was too much pressure and the expectations made it a difficult season. What do you think was going to happen? You guys put this team together. You put the spotlight on yourself. You get out of here with that. It just goes to show you, man, that these guys all hype, man. It's all hype with a lot of these guys. And I put all 3 of them clowns on the Heat in the same category. And that's just all I'm going to say about that. It's too much work, and we didn't get to have any fun this year. Get the hell out of here with that, Chris Bosh. All right. Anyways, I'm going to have some fun tonight because the Indians are playing. I'm looking forward to it. Josh Tomlin taking the mound. Can't wait to go see what happens to the Indians here tonight. Game 2 of this 4-game series before the Tigers come in. You got the Angels here. Let's see what the Indians can do tonight. And of course, speaking of GV Artwork, tomorrow is the GV Artwork t-shirt giveaway. They got a really cool t-shirt that they put together for the giveaway as well. So that'll be cool. I think it's the first 10,000 fans tomorrow will get those, but that's tomorrow. Tonight, Josh Tomlin taking the mound for the Indians against the Angels. Looking forward to talking about that tomorrow. Dan Wismar from the Cleveland Fan, he'll be here with us tomorrow as well. We'll talk about all of the latest going on in sports and with the Tribe and your takes and so much more, guys. Where else? Same bad time, same bad channel, but right here on the Sports Fix. We love you, Cleveland. We'll see you tomorrow. Until then, have a great night. Go Tribe, baby. And join us back here tomorrow. We love you, Cleveland. We'll see you at noon right here on the Sports Fix.
The